Chapter 6:15. Little girl, am I unique in your heart? This sentence was very soft, so soft that it was only enough to blow a few strands of hair in her ear. However, when it landed in her heart, it was very, very heavy. She seemed to feel the unusual aura of the big ice cube. The arm around her shoulder tightened inch by inch. Unique? She had never thought about this question. But even if she asked it now, did she still need to think about the answer? She buried her head in his arms and nodded solemnly. She didn't know why the big ice cube suddenly asked this question, which caught her off guard, but she had never resisted anything from the big ice cube. This person who had been in her life 5 years ago, who had protected, tolerated, loved, respected, and pitied her, was her only tie in this world apart from her parents. Even if he was powerful and omnipotent, in her eyes, he was the closest person who was willing to give her peace and happiness. Yes, unique. After nodding, she felt that it wasn't enough, so she said solemnly. As soon as she finished speaking, she felt the person holding her tightly in his arms again. There are no two similar leaves in the world, they are all unique, and you are also unique to me. Chu Qingyan opened her mouth, wanting to ask why the big ice cube suddenly asked her this emotional question, but then she slowly closed her mouth. At this moment, the big ice cube gave her a helpless feeling, like a clingy child. As soon as this thought came to her mind, it was immediately sent flying by Chu Qingyan. How could her big ice cube be like a child? She wondered if something had happened in the capital city, which made the big ice cube so depressed. The parents who were only responsible for giving birth and not raising were really the most irresponsible parents in the world. For so many years, the news from the capital city would always come. She saw that every time he received the news, he would sit in the study for a whole day or a whole night. Although the big ice cube showed that he didn't care about them, the strongest thing in the world was the blood relationship. How could he not care just because he didn't say it? In this way, the two of them hugged in silence. Time seemed to have stopped. At this moment, they were incomparably relieved. If you want to take her away, then take her. In the end, he released her and his expression returned to its usual coldness. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that there was a faint smile at the corner of his eyes. Have you changed your mind? Chu Qingyan was surprised by his change of heart. She couldn't help but tilt her head and ask him with a smile. Isn't it good? He asked with interest. Chu Qingyan choked. How did the obedient big ice cube just disappear? Could it be that she was imagining things? Tell me why you want to take her away. Xiao Su returned to his seat and poured himself another cup of tea before looking up at her. Because he was too emotional, he suddenly forgot that the little fellow in front of him was not someone who could not distinguish right from wrong. So, perhaps she had her own plans behind this matter. Chu Qingyan sat down in front of him. Seeing that he had asked the question, she pursed her lips and smiled. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. I feel that Yang Xiaohuan is quite capable. From what I know, this girl has read a lot of books since she was young and has a great interest in agriculture and business. Am I not going to Jiangnan to try to do business? I want to train her to be my right-hand man. You don't worry about her character? Xiao Su looked at her indifferently. Her nature is naturally formed and her character is cultivated. I believe that she can change. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and showed a touch of confidence. Seeing the look in her eyes, Xiao Su's lips curled up slightly. Jin Ling is in Jiangnan. If you feel that she is suitable, you can send her there for a period of training. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Big Ice Cube, you agreed. She originally had this plan, but seeing that the big ice cube did not seem to like Xiaohuan very much, she did not say anything. She did not expect that he would take the initiative to mention it. Xiao Su looked at the beaming face in front of him and reached out to pat her head without saying anything. Chu Qingyan suddenly threw herself into his arms and rubbed against his arm. She giggled and said, Big Ice Cube is still the best. As soon as her voice fell, she was completely unaware of the indescribable expression that flashed across the face above her head. This scene made him involuntarily recall last night. Qingyan, there is one thing that you must do. He lightly exhaled and pulled her away from him. Your Highness, please instruct me. She stood upright with a solemn expression, but her eyes were mischievous. In the future, you are not allowed to touch a drop of wine. Xiao Su's words were loud and clear, but Chu Qingyan's face fell immediately. I think the wine is quite delicious. She immediately blushed and tried to negotiate. There is no room for negotiation. Otherwise, every time you commit a crime, you will be confined for a day. His tone was strict and did not allow for any discussion. Chu Qingyan knew that this matter had already come to an end. It's getting late, sleep early. Leaving this sentence, Xiao Su got up and walked out of the door. Chu Qingyan looked at his straight back, but her face was full of anger. Tyrannical, dictatorial, treacherous, only knows how to threaten, bad person, monopolize power. He had not walked far when he heard the complaints behind him. Xiao Su smiled. What happened last night could not happen again. He was afraid that one day he would not be able to control himself. Later, this kind of apprehension became a benefit for him. A long time later, when Chu Qingyan found out that she liked to tease people after drinking, and it was her own big ice cube, she was determined to quit drinking. If someone gave her wine, she would get angry. But a certain big bad wolf seemed to have tasted the sweetness, and could not stop. "Aching, this pastry is not bad, do you want to try it?" The big bad wolf held a plate of pastries in front of her. Chu Qingyan did not suspect him, took a piece and put it into her mouth, and asked with a lisp, "What is this called?" "The taste is quite special." "Wine fermented rose cream." The big bad wolf's eyes flashed with a trace of light. "Oh." Chu Qingyan's eyes widened in hindsight, but soon it was replaced by a shining gaze. "Tonight, even if you shout until your throat is hoarse, no one will come to save you." Chu Qingyan, who had turned into a perverted fox, pushed him onto the bed. The big bad wolf looked at the woman who was straddling him, looking at him with a sly smile. "It's my honor." Soon, the fragrance of wine in the room was covered by another charming and gentle atmosphere. Panting and suppressed chanting shattered in the last bit of candlelight. But the next day, when Chu Qingyan woke up and saw the ambiguous red marks on her body, she almost growled. She fell into his trap again. Last night, did she go overboard? Woo-woo. Just when she was feeling ashamed and angry, a hand suddenly stretched out from the quilt and pulled her into an embrace, and a lazy and seductive voice in the morning sounded in her ears. "You have good energy. Do you want to continue?" The question was just a notification. Chu Qingyan did not have time to cry out in alarm, and was once again eaten by the big bad wolf. Chapter 616. The next day, Yang Xiaohuan successfully passed Chu Qingyan's test. Chu Qingyan originally just wanted to test her casually, but she didn't expect this girl to give her such a big surprise. She unknowingly asked for 2 hours. Later, when the two were drinking tea, Yang Xiaohuan took the initiative to mention, "My mother was born in a business family, so when I was young, I followed her around and was influenced by her, so I know a little." Chu Qingyan nodded with satisfaction. It seemed that she made the right choice. This little girl was indeed suitable for business. "I really found a treasure." When Yang Xiaohuan heard her say that, her cheeks instantly turned red, and she lowered her head shyly. These expressions didn't escape Chu Qingyan's eyes. She remembered Big Ice Cube's reminder and suddenly felt that she shouldn't give this little girl too much misconception, otherwise it would be difficult to clean up the mess. "Xiaohuan, I have a secret to tell you, but you can't tell anyone. Also, you have to be mentally prepared and promise not to be scared." Chu Qingyan put away the expression on her face and said seriously. Yang Xiaohuan heard her serious tone and immediately sat up straight with a serious look. "Xiaohuan, I'm not a young man." When her voice fell, Chu Qingyan glanced at her and found that she didn't seem to understand her words, so Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and took off the silver mask on her face. When Yang Xiaohuan saw the person in front of her suddenly take off the mask and reveal the hidden face, she was instantly stunned. She had never seen such a handsome man who was like a fairy. Wait. She saw the person in front of her continue to move her fingers and untie the white hair band on her head. Just like that, her black hair fell down and covered her entire shoulder. Seeing that Yang Xiaohuan was so stunned that she couldn't react, Chu Qingyan didn't stop what she was doing. She continued to wipe the slightly modified things on her face, revealing her real face. Young Xiaowan's eyes widened. This girl who was more beautiful than a fairy was Big Brother Chu? Chu Qingyan saw that she was still in a daze and frowned slightly. She raised a finger and waved it in front of her face. Are you dumbfounded? Yang Xiaohuan was shocked when she came back to her senses. Her eyes were still filled with disbelief. Chu Qingyan sighed. She knew that things would turn out this way. Xiaohuan, if you don't want to go with me now, it's not too late. When Yang Xiaohuan heard what she said, she immediately shook her head. Big Brother Chu, oh no, big sister, I won't regret my decision to go with you. Yang Xiaohuan shook her head and said hurriedly. Chu Qingyan saw her expression and felt relieved, but he still couldn't help but want to tease her. From a teenager to a young girl, do you feel regret? Yang Xiaohuan continued to shake her head. No, regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, in Xiaohuan's heart, you are the person who treats Xiaohuan the best. You are Xiaohuan's benefactor. Speaking till here, Yang Xiaohuan seemed to have understood something as she looked at her shyly. Elder sister, have you misunderstood something? Xiaohuan don't. In the end, she couldn't continue, but she believed that her sister would understand what she wanted to express. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. She felt that she was thinking too much. Let me formally introduce myself. I am Chu Qingyan. To the outside world, my identity is Chu Yen, His Royal Highness's strategist. Chu Qingyan curved her lips into a smile. Since she had already decided to take her in as her subordinate, then there was nothing to hide. Don't use people you don't suspect. Chu Qingyan. This truth shocked her more than Big Brother Chu being a woman. Looking at Yang Xiaowan's mouth that was big enough to swallow an egg, Chu Qingyan didn't understand. She wanted to ask, but the person in front of her suddenly pounced over. She was shocked and could only catch the other person. You are His Royal Highness's little princess consort? You were betrothed to the King of England when you were 10 years old, and now you are his only true love? Yang Xiaowan's face was full of surprise. Only true love? Which eye did she use to see that? Xiaowan, I admire you so much. Yang Xiaowan's face was full of worship. Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. What was there to admire? Could it be that she admired her for enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens and taking in this great devil who was rumored to be wicked beyond redemption? But my family's big ice cube is clearly warm, kind, and beautiful, okay? Speak human language. Chu Qingyan coughed softly, correcting the way she spoke. Hearing this, Yang Xiaohuan immediately straightened her clothes and stood upright, but there was still an incredulous light in her eyes. Big Sister Chu, did you know? My mother said that Xian Kingdom can be said to be filled with young talents. If His Highness Prince Ying said he was second, no one would dare to say he was first. But His Royal Highness's cold temperament is as famous as his reputation. Everyone is laughing at that marriage decree, but no one would have thought that you stayed by his side for so many years at such a young age. It's simply too admirable. Many people say that the woman His Royal Highness loves the most is you. Chu Qingyan patted the head of the person in front of her and shook her head with a sigh. Little girl, don't listen to hearsay. It's more important to be realistic. His Highness and I are not the kind of people you think we are. Is that so? Yang Xiaohuan was a little confused. Because you are not a man, but a woman. Then when I recall His Highness' actions towards you along the way, he was very gentle, much gentler than other people. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Is that so? It's obvious. He doesn't talk to others, even to his subordinates, he only says a few words. But to you he is not stingy with his words. He even looks at you. That kind of feeling is simply indescribable. Yang Xiaohuan had not yet experienced her first awakening of love and did not know how to describe that kind of infatuated gaze. At this moment, she was racking her brain to think. Chu Qingyan had already regained her senses. She smiled faintly and said mischievously, After all, I treat him differently from other people because I am his one and only. She did not know whether to treat her as his one and only sister or as his one and only child. In any case, she was one and only. She had already obtained satisfaction for this. Yang Xiaohuan rubbed her head. Didn't one and only mean one's existence and only one's love? But even a silly child like Yang Xiaohuan understood this principle. Those two fools were still separated by a layer of window paper that could not be poked through. When she left the Yang residence the next day, Chu Qingyan did not forget Yang Qing's incredulous expression when he found out that she was taking away his concubine's daughter. It was simply horrifying. "Young Master Chu, have you taken a fancy to my Xiaohuan?" Yes, I have taken a fancy to her talent." Chu Qingyan smiled faintly at him. Yang Qing's face was like the sky had fallen and the earth had cracked. From now on, Yang Xiaohuan is a member of the King of England's residence. Xiao Su made the final decision. They were on their way. Yang Xiaohuan hugged her bundle and did not look back. Her father's shock, her sister's anger. Her life would not be the same from today onwards. Because elder sister Chu had promised her to bring her to Jiangnan to open up the business world. The past, the loneliness, the hurt, the loneliness, the pain, they were all far away. What she wanted was the future of being by elder sister Chu's side. "Jiangnan, we are coming." Chapter 617. Jiangnan was good, and the scenery was familiar. When the sun rose, the flowers on the river were red, and when spring came, the river water was as green as blue. How could it not be Jiangnan? After staying in Lianqing for so long, Chu Qingyan had almost forgotten what it felt like to be on the shores of Jiangnan with the spring breeze. As the river grew narrower, the willow trees on both sides of the river became clearer and clearer. As the misty rain fell on her shoulders, Chu Qingyan stood at the bow of the boat, facing the wind. Suddenly, she felt as if she was floating in the air. Big Ice Cube, Jiangnan is a good place to live. Comfortable, peaceful, lively, and full of life. Xiao Su's gaze fell on the person beside him, and his gaze softened along with the bright smile on her face. You're on the boat looking at the scenery, and the person looking at the scenery is looking at you. The scenery decorates your window, and you decorate other people's eyes. Chu Qingyan turned to point at the boat in front of them and wanted to ask him, but when she met his gentle gaze, she subconsciously froze, and her heart felt itchy. When Xiao Su saw her look back, he withdrew the emotions in his eyes. Hiking in March and river swimming in April. Those boats are rented by the people to travel with their families. Xiao Su's gaze fell on the simple boat not far away, and he explained to her. Chu Qingyan bit her lip. Her thoughts had already drifted away from his gentle gaze, and she didn't even pay attention to what he said. At this moment, something suddenly hit Chu Qingyan's clothes. She came back to her senses and looked down to find a peach blossom. She bent down to pick it up and placed it in her palm. The pink petals were still wet, and it looked very cute. It should have been picked not long ago. She held the flower and looked in the direction it came from. She saw that there were several small boats around her boat, and there were 2 or 3 girls standing on the boat that threw the flower. They had pink faces and were looking at her shyly. Chu Qingyan was a little confused, and at this time, several flowers were thrown from other ships. She was in a hurry to catch them, and when she was holding a large bouquet of flowers, she heard a charming laughter. Pueling, Turin, and the others came out of the ship and found that their little princess was about to be drowned by the sea of flowers. They were also surprised. When Yang Xiaohuan saw this, she couldn't help but snicker and whisper, "This is a way for women in Jiangnan to express their admiration. When they see an outstanding man or a man they like, they will throw their flowers at him to express their feelings. From this, it seems that our master is too popular." Because she knew that her mistress was a girl, Yang Xiaohuan's tone was filled with schadenfreude when she said this. Chu Qingyan's expression was a bit awkward when she heard this. If she knew, she wouldn't have taken off her mask. Maybe she wouldn't have been so eye-catching. When Xiao Su heard Yang Xiaohuan's explanation, he looked at the peach blossoms, peonies, Chinese roses, and tulips in the little fellow's arms. His face suddenly darkened. At this time, there were also flowers thrown at Xiao Su. Xiao Su moved slightly to the side and dodged them. Then he walked back to the cabin with large strides. Chu Qingyan turned around and saw the peach blossom that was being stepped on by the big ice cube. She couldn't help but feel pity for the girl that threw the flower. Her big ice cube was so unromantic. However, if the big ice cube wasn't wearing a veil hat and had an unapproachable aura, it would have caused a traffic jam just to catch a glimpse of a beautiful man. Chu Qingyan smiled at the ships in front of her and then turned to return to her cabin. Although she was not conceited about her beauty, it would be quite deceiving if she were to wear men's clothes. She had better not go and spoil the flowers and plants. Xiao Su lowered his head and drank his tea. Suddenly, a peach blossom appeared in front of him. He raised his eyebrows and the person behind him rushed in front of him. Present Buddha with borrowed flowers. He already knew when she approached him, but he didn't expose her. Xiao Su didn't reach out to take it. Instead, he poured a cup of tea and pushed it in front of her. We've arrived in Jiangnan. What are your plans? She had already known that he was unromantic. She withdrew her hand and sat down in front of him. She fiddled with the flower while pondering. The big ice cube was asking her what plans she had for her business. I want to find a business partner. It's best if he has a wide network of contacts or sales channels. This was what she had told Yen Luo before. Xiao Su pondered for a moment. Jin Ling is in charge of the bank and my remaining businesses. He might be able to help. No. I don't think I should get involved with you. You're doing things in secret. Don't be exposed because of my business. The people in the capital city aren't easy to deal with. If they find out, you'll be implicated. Chu Qingyan knew her own limits. What she was going to do would definitely come into contact with the upper-class nobles. If Jin Ling and the others were to interfere and were found out, the big ice cube would be implicated as well. Xiao Su smiled slightly. I didn't ask Jin Ling to get involved. I asked him to help you ask if there's anyone suitable. So she had misunderstood him. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. Her skin was as fair as snow. Coupled with the delicate flower in her hand, she was simply more beautiful than the flowers. Xiao Su averted his gaze and lowered his head to drink his tea. To be honest, I'm very curious about Jin Ling. When will you bring me to meet him? Chu Qingyan rubbed her hands. She had already met the wood spirit, water spirit, fire spirit, and ethereal spirit. Only Jin Ling and water spirit had yet to meet. Water spirit was in the capital city. She would probably have to wait until later to meet him. However, Jin Ling was in Jiangnan. Chu Qingyan immediately asked. The man's tone was filled with eagerness. Xiao Su frowned. Wasn't he just a Jin Ling? What was there to meet? Didn't he have 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth? Xiao Su was completely unaware that his heart was filled with jealousy. Let's not go to the bank yet. Come with me to meet someone first, Xiao Su said unhurriedly. Who is it? Chu Qingyan blinked. It was rare for Big Ice Cube to meet someone. This made Chu Qingyan extremely curious about the person's identity. Big Ice Cube was usually alone. If she had not met Yi Lingfeng, she would have thought that Big Ice Cube was destined to be alone. Xiao Su smiled but did not say anything. Still keeping it a secret? Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of someone. Her eyes widened. Is it the other good friend you mentioned before other than Yi Lingfeng? I remember you said that he was in Jiangnan. Xiao Su nodded, expressing his appreciation for her memory. Lin Fengyi, the current magistrate of Jiangnan, he explained. Wow, he's actually an official. And this official is so high-ranking. Chu Qingyan could not help but exclaim. A magistrate was equivalent to a provincial governor in modern times. Not bad. Xiao Su smiled. Chu Qingyan recovered from her surprise and began to mutter, a magistrate's position is so high. To be promoted to such a position, it would probably take a long time. Then wouldn't he be very old? Xiao Su smiled. You'll know when you see him. Chu Qingyan snorted softly. Still keeping it a secret. Chapter 6:18. When the group got off the boat, someone came to pick them up. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already put on a veil to prevent a hole from being smashed on the road. But on the streets of Jiangnan, there were quite a few young men and women wearing veils, bamboo hats, or even veils. However, Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su had outstanding temperaments, so they still received quite a bit of attention. This was the first time she came to Jiangnan, so Chu Qingyan was filled with curiosity towards everything. When several Jiangnan girls walked past them, Chu Qingyan couldn't help saying to the big ice block beside her, "Everyone says that Jiangnan is a land of heroes. It really isn't wrong." "Why do you say that?" Xiao Su was a bit curious that she would say this when she just stepped into Jiangnan. Jiangnan is filled with beauties, handsome men, beautiful scenery, and delicious food. When her voice fell, Chu Qingyan became interested. She raised her hand to point forward and continued, "Look, the young master standing at the painting stall in front, the young master picking out the brush over there, and the young master walking over there, they are all handsome. There are so many young men and women on the street and they all have such good looks. It really is a feast for the eyes." When Chu Qingyan opened her mouth, Jin Exen, Hualing, and the others felt the cold aura around their master become even colder. "Walk properly and don't look around." When Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she heard the person beside her reprimand her in a lukewarm manner. She choked. He was fine just now, so why did he suddenly become cold? The big ice block's thoughts were truly hard to guess. However, when her eyes were filled with beauties, handsome men, and beautiful scenery, Chu Qingyan's thoughts were hooked. She bought quite a few snacks and ate them all the way to the Lin Manor. "Please give this invitation to Sir Lin." Hua Ling came forward and handed the invitation to the guard at the door. After the guard took it, he nodded and walked in. Chu Qingyan raised her head to look at the Lin Manor. It was dignified and there weren't any fancy decorations, giving people a very dignified feeling. She just didn't know what Lin Fengyi looked like. The big ice block kept her in suspense the entire way, so she didn't want to ask. Just as Chu Qingyan's mind was filled with images of a pot-bellied, balding and stout-looking middle-aged official, the guard came out. Behind him was an elderly man, and from the looks of it, it seemed like Chu Qingyan blinked. This was Lin Fengyi? The big ice block and this old man? "Young Master Xiao," the old man walked in front of Xiao. "I'm sorry, but our family's young Master Xiao's up. Have him wait." The old man walked in front of Xiao. Chu Qingyan sighed. So it was the butler. But why was it so unlucky? Xiao Su nodded. "I have a manor in Jiangnan, so I won't disturb you. I'll come visit again in 3 days." After bidding farewell to the people of the Lin Manor, Xiao Su brought Chu Qingyan back. "You seem very disappointed?" Xiao Su saw her drooping shoulders and asked. "That's right. I really wanted to see what your friends were like." Her tone was depressed. Although the big ice block's temper wasn't strange, it was hard for normal people to get along with him. She originally thought that he didn't have any friends other than Xiao Lai-chi, but when she found out that he had 2 close friends, she was very curious. She always wanted to enter the big ice block's world. The imperial family was so complicated that the big ice block wouldn't let her enter. So she could only know about his past with these 2 close friends. She didn't see them. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't disappointed. First top scorer in the provincial examinations at the age of 11. First top scorer in the metropolitan examinations at the age of 12. First top scorer in the palace examinations at the age of 14. Assistant Minister of Rights at the age of 17. Magistrate of Hangzhou at the age of 18. Magistrate of Jiangnan at the age of 20. Chu Qingyan suddenly heard a clear voice. She looked up in a daze and met the calm gaze of the person above her. Chu Qingyan then realized that he was telling her about his close friend. Then, a trace of disbelief appeared in her eyes. Top scorer? Top scorer? Top scorer? This person is a genius. Chu Qingyan sucked in a breath. It wasn't scary for someone to be the top scorer. What was scary was for someone to be in a stable position. Yes, there aren't many smart people. He's one. When Xiao Su mentioned his good friend, a faint smile appeared in his eyes. The big ice block was an extremely intelligent person. It was rare to hear such high praise from him. However, it also proved that Lin Fengyi wasn't an ordinary person. That was why the big ice block liked him. Then how long has he been a magistrate? He had risen from the top scorer to the top in Jiangnan in just a few years. His knowledge, ability, and methods were not to be underestimated. 1 year. Well, doesn't that mean that he's only 21 years old? Chu Qingyan exclaimed. So young. She immediately waved the image of a fat belly out of her mind. That's about right. He's the youngest top scorer in Sichuan. He's also the youngest magistrate in Jiangnan. Xiao Su nodded. It's true that youths are the most talented since ancient times. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. Then you also met him in the capital? No. When I was passing through Jiangnan on my way back to the capital, I met him. Xiao Su couldn't help but recall the first time they met. You're the King of England? You're this year's top scorer? When the two hot-blooded youths first met, they asked each other for their names. There was a hint of provocation in their tone. However, after 8 years, he had become more introverted. He had also become more mature. Xiao Su pulled himself out of his memories and heard the little fellow muttering. Lin Fingyi, Lin Fingyi. I suddenly feel that this name is very familiar. I remember now. Sichuan's young master Lin Fingyi. He's only 21 years old, handsome and beautiful. People call him Qingfeng Ink Bamboo. Yes, Qingfeng Ink Bamboo. So it's him. Chu Qingyan exclaimed in surprise. Xiao Su frowned. What nonsense was this? Just as Chu Qingyan was about to tell Big Ice Cube about the ranking of the most beautiful men, the people around her suddenly sped up. Their faces were filled with anxiety and curiosity as they watched the drama unfold. They're fighting. Everyone quickly go and see. Hibiscus Pavilion and Fragrant Powder Pavilion are fighting. As Chu Qingyan was standing in the middle of the street, she was almost knocked down by the sudden wave of people. Luckily, the big ice block beside her reached out and grabbed her by the shoulders. They quickly retreated to the side and avoided a disaster. Just as she steadied herself, Chu Qingyan couldn't hold back her curiosity. She pulled one of the commoners and asked curiously, "Uncle, what happened? Where are you all going?" That old man took a look at Chu Qingyan and the rest's attire before he understood. You all must be from other places. It's normal that you don't know about Hibiscus Pavilion and Fragrant Powder Pavilion. The owners of these two shops have been rivals for decades. Today, they're opening their shops, and they're even opposite each other. Aren't they stealing customers? The two shops' workers are fighting. It's not a big deal. It's common for workers to fight. However, I heard that today, the two young masters are fighting. We can't miss out on this. This old man will go and take a look. After saying that, the old man ran off. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. This body can run so fast. Big ice block, let's go and join in the fun? Compared to those secret schemes, this confrontation on the surface is indeed open and aboveboard. But with such a big fuss, why didn't the local officials come to mediate? Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled. She looked again at the two beautiful young men who were wrestling with each other without caring about their image. Could it be that the background of these two families is big enough that no one dares to touch them? I can't say for sure, Xiao Su said. The two of them didn't talk for long before two groups of people squeezed into the crowd to watch the show. Second young master, old master knows that you are fighting with the Hua family again and has sent this servant to bring you home. The servant in green leaned close to the Chen family's young master's ear and said loudly. On the other side, the servant in blue also came to the Hua family's young master's side. Master, old master is angry. He wants you to go back quickly, or else you will have to bear the consequences. The Chen family and the Hua family finally stopped fighting. Hua family cat, just you wait. I will definitely beat your Hibiscus Pavilion down. Chen family Wang, don't overestimate yourself. In a few days, your Fragrant Powder Pavilion will be closed down. Pay. The two of them looked at each other with disdain. They turned their heads and each went to take their people home. The onlookers saw that there was no more drama to watch and dispersed. The Hua family's young master just happened to pass by the tea house. At this moment, Chu Qingyan heard him talking to his servant. Young master, you are too daring. When you go back, you will be punished by old master to reflect on your mistakes. The servant in blue disagreed. What's there to be afraid of? I have long wanted to beat that Chen family Wang. I hate that smiling tiger face of his the most. It's always in front of me. It's an eyesore. The purple-clothed youth said unconcernedly. Young master, it's a smiling tiger, not a smiling tiger face. The servant in blue wiped the sweat on his forehead. It's all the same. Anyway, I've beaten him up and vented my anger. I have no complaints even if I go home and receive my rod. The purple-clothed youth patted the servant in blue's shoulder and continued with a smile. If father hits me 30 times with the rod, remember to help me take 20 hits. Don't forget, it was me who helped you hide the fact that you miscalculated the accounts a few days ago. The servant in blue was petrified. The purple-clothed youth let go of his shoulder and swaggered forward in a relaxed mood. At this time, the purple-clothed youth seemed to have sensed something. He stopped in his tracks and looked in the direction where Chu Qingyan was standing. She saw a youth wearing a gauze hat standing in front of the tea house's windowsill. Although she couldn't see his face, she could feel that the other party's eyes were on her. Chu Qingyan looked at him and saw that there was an extra panda eye on his face. It just happened to be a pair. She couldn't help but smile and nod at him. Looking carefully, this person had a handsome face. The scar on his face didn't affect his appearance, but it was more delicate. The purple-clothed youth frowned and looked at her. He whispered something and then continued to walk forward. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction that the purple-clothed youth left and couldn't help but smile. This Hua family's young master was quite interesting. The fight between the Hua family and the Chen family is really sensational. In more than 10 years, this is the first time I've seen such a big fight. It's a feast for the eyes. Only the Hua family and the Chen family would dare to do such a thing under the eyes of the government. If it were anyone else, they would have been arrested long ago. Which government official doesn't want to protect the two big merchants in Jiangnan? They are still waiting for them to pay taxes. That's right, that's right. After the commotion dispersed, Chu Qingyan heard the comments about the large-scale fight in the tea house. She held the teacup in her hand and pondered. Two big merchants? But do you already have a target? Xiao Su heard her muttering to herself and couldn't help but ask. I have this thought, but I have to understand the background of these two families first. It's hard to make a conclusion now. Chu Qingyan sighed. No one knows me better than this big ice cube. Leave this matter to Jin Ling. He will give you a detailed report. Xiao Su tapped his finger on the table and said lightly. But then should we go to the bank to look for Jin Ling and the rest? Chu Qingyan rubbed her hands and looked excited. Xiao Su glanced at her and finally nodded. The Su family bank was located in the northern part of Jiangnan. It was the only bank in Jiangnan, but at the same time, it was the general office in Sichuan. The other branches had to remit their accounts to the northern part of Jiangnan. Because the northern part of the city was quite a distance away, Jin Ling had already sent someone to deliver a carriage. Thus, the group sat on the carriage and headed to the Su family bank. Chapter 620. Su Clan Bank. Chu Qingyan sat in the carriage. The moment she opened the curtains, she saw the 4 low-key words. However, the carriage did not stop at the entrance. Instead, it went around the main gate and went to the back gate. To avoid trouble, we're not going through the main gate. Chu Qingyan had just put down the curtains when she heard Xiao Su's voice. I understand. She knew that he was explaining to her, and her heart felt warm. The carriage went straight to the back gate. After it stopped, Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su got off the carriage together. At this moment, the small courtyard was already filled with people, all dressed in dark robes. The person in the lead was dressed differently from the others. He wore a hat and had a beard. He looked to be around 30 years old. He stepped forward and bowed to Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. Jin Ling and the stewards pay our respects to Master and Princess Consort. With that, the people in the courtyard all knelt down. Our respects to Master and Princess Consort. Chu Qingyan stared with wide eyes at the person who called himself Jin Ling. What happened to the handsome man? How did he become an uncle? Xiao Su looked at Chu Qingyan's expression and his lips curled. He raised his hand and said to everyone, Rise, there's no need to be so polite. Everyone replied in unison and got up without any hesitation. Jin Ling, stay. Everyone else, go do your own things. I'll summon you if there's anything. Xiao Su said to everyone again. Hearing that, everyone retreated in an orderly manner. Master, this way please. Jin Ling bowed and invited. Xiao Su nodded and led Chu Qingyan and the others to the living room. Along the way, Jin Ling, who had been walking peacefully, felt a gaze that could not be ignored land on him. His scalp tightened a little. He could guess that it was the young princess consort, because when he knelt down, the princess consort had cast him a look that could be described as one of horror. Finally, they reached the living room. Xiao Su sat on the main seat, and Chu Qingyan sat on the seat below him. Yang Xiaohuan and Turan had arrived at the Su family bank before them when they entered Jiangnan, so Jin Xian and Hua Ling were next to them. Jin Ling held the account book with both hands. Master, these are the accounts for the past 2 years. Please take a look. Xiao Su tapped the table lightly. Jin Lingi understood and placed the account book on the table. Has everything been going well? Xiao Su picked up the teacup on the table and asked casually. The business of the bank has always been very stable, but something happened recently. When Jin Ling mentioned this matter, there was a trace of difficulty on her face. What is it? Xiao Su was just about to pick up the teacup lid when he heard this. His fingers paused and his expression became serious. Jin Ling knew that this matter could not be hidden for long and immediately reported, some time ago, someone deposited 500,000 taels in our bank. Such a large amount is rare, so the servants handled it very carefully. But this money was placed in the treasury for a few days. When the servants went in to count it, they found that the banknotes, except for the beginning and the end, had all turned into white paper. And this matter was leaked somehow. The commoners said that there was no money in the bank's treasury. Within a few days, the bank's reputation was seriously damaged, and it caused panic among the people. Those depositors came to withdraw their money. How did you handle it? Xiao Su's expression became serious. At the side, Chu Qingyan also had a serious expression. In the bank's business, the most important thing was reputation. Once the reputation was damaged, the bank would not be far from closing down. Jin Ling continued. Originally, this subordinate had planned to secretly store the money that had accumulated over the past 2 years, but this matter happened, so I could only take it all out and borrow money from other banks. But 2 more things happened. The money that was transferred from Xiangyang was robbed halfway, and the money that was transferred from Xianyang was almost robbed as well. Our people tracked down the robbers, but they could not find any information about this group of robbers. At the same time, there were rumors in Xianyang and Xiangyang that there was no money in the bank's treasury, causing the commoners to withdraw their money. It was one disaster after another. Fortunately, the major banks issued notices that all depositors who wanted to withdraw money could withdraw as long as they showed their deposit slips. No matter how much money was deposited, the interest would be paid. This more or less calmed down the disaster. Jin Ling still had some lingering fear when she said this. You did well. Xiao Su nodded. How much did we lose this time? 1 million taels. Although Jin Ling had received master's affirmation, she still felt a little ashamed. Xiao Su put down the teacup in his hand and turned to ask the person beside him, Qingyan, what do you think of this matter? Chu Qingyan was immersed in her analysis of this matter. Suddenly being called out, she did not hesitate and directly said her thoughts. This matter was obviously planned by someone in the dark. The accumulated money was ready to be disposed of, but coincidentally, someone saved 500,000 taels and the money in the bank was swapped. Following that, rumors spread that the secretly borrowed money from Xiangyang and Xianyang were robbed, so Chu Qingyan paused and looked up at Jin Ling. She said word by word, I suspect that there is a mole in the bank. A mole? Impossible, these people were all groomed by this subordinate. How could they do such a thing? Jin Ling refuted without thinking. Jin Ling, don't be agitated. I'm just suspecting. Before this, she had already learned about the bank. The stewards were all groomed by Jin Ling and were all capable subordinates. Thus, she did not mind Jin Ling's protectiveness at this time. Xiao Su looked deeply at Chu Qingyan, then looked at Jin Ling. This matter happened at least 10 days ago. What have you found out? Jin Ling was embarrassed by her master's question. Nothing at all. The person who saved 500,000 taels disappeared without a trace after withdrawing the money. Xiao Su tapped his fingers on the table and finally said, "Prepare to find the mole." Master, Jin Ling was surprised. There are so many coincidences. Haven't you thought about it? If someone had not leaked the news that you were going to store the accumulated money, with the bank's caution, would so many things have happened? You should have thought of it when the money in the bank was swapped. Xiao Su's voice was low, but there was no trace of reproach. Because the person in front of him was his most loyal subordinate, he could not bear to scold her. Jin Ling immediately looked up. If even her master said this, then there was a high chance that there was a mole in this matter. Yes, this subordinate will go investigate immediately. Qingyan, help him. Xiao Su said lightly, but it gave Chu Qingyan a fright. Hualing also looked at Chu Qingyan in confusion. How could this little princess consort help him? Don't be a hindrance when the time comes. All right. Chu Qingyan did not say much and agreed. Since the big ice cube said this, he must have his own plans. Chu Qingyan was a bit tired, so Xiao Su let her go and rest. At this time, Xiao Su looked at Jin Ling in the hall and said slowly, "You don't need to show your true face in front of Qingyan. Give her a stable image. She still has many things to learn from you in the future. I'm afraid that your aura won't be able to control her." Jin Ling did not feel anything was wrong and nodded in agreement. On the side, Hualing almost laughed out loud. Master did not want Jin Ling to show his true face. He was clearly the most handsome of the fierce cavalry, but he hid under a 30-year-old skin. To have such a jealous master, Hualing mourned for Jin Ling. Chapter 621. Chu Qingyan entered the room that had been arranged for her. She saw that Yang Xiaohuan was already busy in the room. She smiled and called Yang Xiaohuan in front of her. "Have you gotten used to it?" Chu Qingyan sat down and asked the person in front of her. Yang Xiaohuan nodded. "Everything is good. Everyone is very friendly to Xiaohuan." As she spoke, she poured a cup of tea for her mistress. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment. She had already told Yang Xiaohuan that she wanted to establish her own business in Jiangnan, so she did not hesitate. "Is there anything you want to learn now?" "I will listen to mistress's orders." Yang Xiaohuan looked down as she replied. "I have discussed with His Highness before. You do not have enough experience. First, you will learn by Jin Ling's side. When the time is right, you will be transferred out. What do you think?" Even though this was the result of her discussion with the ice cube, she still wanted to hear Yang Xiaohuan's thoughts. Xiaohuan likes mistress's arrangement. At this time, Yang Xiaohuan's eyes were shining. When she entered the Su family bank today, she had a general understanding of the status of the bank in Jiangnan. If she could learn by the side of the bank's head, it would be a blessing from the heavens. Seeing that Yang Xiaohuan had no objections, Chu Qingyan nodded slightly. But she was a little worried. Jin Ling did not seem to be very satisfied with her. If she shoved someone to him now, would he accept it? Chu Qingyan thought for a moment before deciding to find Jin Ling tomorrow. The next morning, Jin Ling had just passed by the courtyard when he was stopped. "Wang Fei, you are up so early?" Jin Ling saw that it was Chu Qingyan and bowed politely. Chu Qingyan returned the bow and then said, "Where are you going?" This subordinate needs to go to the accounts room to check the accounts first. Even though Jin Ling did not know why the little princess would ask about his whereabouts, he still reported truthfully. "I will go with you." Chu Qingyan responded without thinking. "Wang Fei, this accounting office is not a place to play. If you feel bored, I can send someone to show you around. There are many places in Jiangnan worth visiting." Jin Ling's tone was distant and polite. Of course, Chu Qingyan could sense Jin Ling's hostility towards her. Although the hostility was inexplicable, she did not intend to care about it. She said with a smile, "Your Highness, didn't you ask me to assist you in investigating the matter of the switch?" Therefore, he went to the accounting office first. Business matters are more important. There will be plenty of opportunities for sightseeing in the future. Jin Ling could not refute the person in front of him, so he could only agree. Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a smile, then she brought Yang Xiaohuan with her and followed him. "Mistress, this Jinda is so serious." Young Xiaohuan complained softly beside her. Chu Qingyan patted her head and said in a low voice, "Maybe he will be your master in the future. You should build a good relationship with him. Otherwise, you will suffer in the future." Yang Xiaohuan's face paled slightly at her mistress' teasing. She looked at the person walking in front of her and subconsciously shivered. They quickly arrived at the accounting office. In the large room, there were more than a dozen tables neatly arranged. Behind the tables sat an accountant. When they saw Jin Ling and Chu Qingyan walk in, they all stood up and bowed. "Greetings to Jinda." Yesterday, Jin Ling had led the stewards to greet Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. They were all from Xiao Lai cavalry. The other people working in the bank did not recognize Chu Qingyan, so when they saw Chu Qingyan behind Jin Ling, most of them looked over. Jin Ling received the puzzled looks of his subordinates and was in a dilemma. He did not know how to introduce this Wang Fei in men's clothing. "This one is Boss Su's friend, Chu Qingyan. Please take care of me." Chu Qingyan did not wait for Jin Ling's introduction and introduced herself first. Everyone nodded at her. Xiao Su was the behind-the-scenes boss of the Su clan bank, but outsiders only knew that the boss of the Su clan bank had the surname Su. They knew nothing else. Everything was handled by Jin Ling. After greeting everyone, Jin Ling led the two of them to a room next door. "Jin Ling, arrange for a trustworthy person to explain to me the major departments in charge of the bank's operations and the person in charge. Also, I want to see the accounts for the past 6 months." Chu Qingyan said as soon as she entered the room. Jin Ling frowned slightly. He felt that his mistress had only asked the young Wang Fei to participate in the investigation on a whim. He originally thought that the young Wang Fei would not be interested in this matter, but he did not expect her to take it seriously. "Little Gongzi, regarding the bank, leave it to me to investigate. If you want to see the accounts, I will have someone send it over." "It's okay. I have nothing to do anyway. The more people there are, the more power there is, right?" Chu Qingyan said with a smile. One does not hit a smiling person. Because of her identity, Jin Ling could only give the order with a dark face. "Mistress, this Jin Da's face was as dark as charcoal just now." Yang Xiaohuan muttered. Yang Xiaohuan, this child, did not know how to check the situation before speaking. Jin Ling had just stepped out of the door when this sentence floated over from behind, causing him to almost trip. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but chuckle. Jin Ling was very efficient. In a moment, the person and the account books were sent over. "If there is nothing else, this subordinate will leave first," Jin Ling said. Chu Qingyan nodded. Yang Xiaohuan, who was standing on the side, clearly felt a dissatisfied gaze on her. When she looked up, there was no one in front of her. "Xiaohuan, have you seen the account books?" Chu Qingyan's index finger tapped on the cover as she tilted her head to look at her. Yang Xiaohuan nodded. "I saw them when I was young. When mother passed away, the steward of the Fu also asked this servant to help calculate the accounts." Chu Qingyan's eyes revealed a trace of a smile. "Then take a look at these account books first and see if there are any problems." Yang Xiaohuan looked at the pile of account books pushed in front of her and swallowed a mouthful of saliva, then nodded. Chu Qingyan looked at her surprised and nervous expression and smiled. Then she turned to the tall and burly man in front of her. The person recommended by Jin Ling was the one who understood the bank the most. He had a square face and a tall figure. Just by standing there, he gave people a kind of oppressive aura, and his complexion was not very good. It seems that Jin Ling found her a great master. "What is your name? What are you responsible for?" Chu Qingyan leaned back in the chair and asked in a leisurely tone. "This subordinate is Ma Yan, responsible for the allocation and recruitment of people in the bank." Ma Yan looked forward, but did not look at the person in front of him. Chu Qingyan nodded slightly. This was similar to the modern human resources department. "Tell me about the main areas that the bank is responsible for now." Chu Qingyan said indifferently. "The bank is currently responsible for the counter storage, the counter withdrawal, the accounts, the warehouse guarding, the recruitment and allocation of people, the logistics and cleaning." Ma Yan spoke a lot of eloquent words, making Chu Qingyan's ears dizzy from listening. Ma Yan looked at the person in front of him and a trace of ridicule appeared in his eyes. Suddenly, Chu Qingyan stood up. "Young Master Chu, where are you going?" "This subordinate has not finished reporting," Ma Yan said with a fake smile. He saw the person in front of him give him a smile that was not a smile. "Let's find a place and have a fight." Ma Yan was instantly stunned. "I see that you are not convinced and did not report carefully. Why don't you accompany me to move my muscles? How about it?" Chapter 622. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, not only Ma Yan, but even Yang Xiaohuan was shocked. Master started a fight as soon as she said so. She was simply too fierce. Ma Yan looked at the thin and weak body in front of him, his eyes showing disdain. Does young Master Chu really want to compete? A gentleman keeps his word. Chu Qingyan slowly walked out of the room, a faint smile hanging on her lips. This Ma Yan clearly knew that she was here to investigate the switch in the warehouse, but he pretended to be deaf and dumb. He was obviously Jin Ling's confidant and was dissatisfied with her sudden appearance. However, she didn't like to use her identity as a big ice cube to suppress people, so she wanted these people to be convinced. Xiao Su sat in the study early in the morning, holding the news sent from all over the country. He looked down and flipped through them one by one. Turin, who delivered the letters, was at the side, waiting for orders. At this time, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door, and soon, someone came in. "Master, let me tell you something interesting." Hualing walked in energetically, unable to hide the smile on his face. "Let's hear it." The warm spring sunlight shone through the window onto the desk, giving people a comfortable feeling. Xiao Su's mood also relaxed a lot because of this. Hearing Hualing's words, he also became interested. Hualing laughed. The young princess fought with Ma Yan, who was in charge of the staff this morning. Xiao Su's eyes revealed a smile. "Why? Master, you don't care who won first?" Hualing rubbed his head, a little confused by his master's words. "Is there a need to ask who won or lost?" Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Was there a need to question his little fellow's strength? Hualing and Turin's faces were covered in blood. Was it really good for Master to support the young princess like this? However, Hualing still answered dutifully. "The news I heard was that Ma Yan didn't put the young princess in his eyes and didn't answer her question, so the young princess arranged a fight with him. The result is obvious. Ma Yan was beaten down. And sometimes it's more direct to use violence to curb violence." Xiao Su raised his hand to stroke his chin with a look of approval. Hualing and Turin couldn't help but twitch their mouths. With that, Xiao Su regained his composure. "I haven't interfered with the bank for many years, and some people have begun to disobey me. It's not a bad idea to let Qingyan go down and rectify the situation." The fire spirit and earth spirit looked at each other when they heard this. Master's words had already vaguely expressed that he wanted to reorganize the Xiao cavalry. Apart from the two of them who were always by their master's side, the rest of the people had their own responsibilities and reported in the form of letters. After a long time, they became lax, disloyal, lazy, and self-inflated. They believed that this was what their master meant. However, the master could not do it himself. He was afraid that he would disappoint the subordinates who had followed him for many years. Therefore, he borrowed the young princess to do it. This was the best outcome. Firstly, the young princess consort needed to be sharpened, and she was capable enough to take on big responsibilities. Secondly, he wanted to take this opportunity to clear the name of the little princess. Thirdly, he wanted to get rid of the dregs and make the Xiao cavalry more cohesive. The plan of killing 3 birds with 1 stone was all in one sentence from their master. Hualing and Turin were deeply moved. Their master was this cunning. At this time, Chu Qingyan looked at Ma Yan, who had been beaten to the ground by her. She patted the non-existent dust off her body and her lips revealed a faint smile. "Ma Yan, are you convinced?" She knew that the Xiao cavalry had always advocated using their fists to solve things when they could not be reasoned with. That was why she had chosen such a simple and crude method. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. This subordinate is convinced. Ma Yen spat out the dirt in his mouth and his face was filled with defeat. He thought that this weak bookworm would not be able to withstand a single blow, but who would have thought that he would not even be able to take 10 moves from her? This was simply too shameful, but he still replied with conviction. Chu Qingyan nodded. It wasn't to the point where he could not be saved. You came from the Xiao cavalry, right? Chu Qingyan suddenly asked. Ma Yen patted the grass off his body. When he suddenly heard this, he unconsciously looked at the person in front of him with vigilance. He saw that she had a bright smile on her face, as if she did not feel that there was anything wrong with her question. Yes. He knew that she was his master's person, but he had never placed her in his eyes before. It's nothing, I was just casually asking. Go and change your clothes first and return to the accounts room later. I'll only give you the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. After saying this, Chu Qingyan slowly left. Although Ma Yen felt that the time given was too short, he did not dare refute and quickly left. Chu Qingyan heard the footsteps behind her and her brows couldn't help knitting together. This was the strength of the Jiangnan Xiao cavalry? If Ma Yen was the representative, then it had to be said that this was a terrible situation. Yang Xiaohuan was absent-mindedly looking at the accounts book. When he heard the footsteps and looked up, he saw that his master was fine and let out a sigh of relief. Master, it's good that you're fine. Don't underestimate your master. How's the account book? After finishing her sentence, Chu Qingyan saw that Yang Xiaohuan had only looked at a few pages. She could not help but frown. Concentrate, I'm still counting on you to help me manage the shop in the future. Yang Xiaohuan knew that she was in the wrong. She stuck out her tongue and calmed down to calculate the accounts seriously. Chu Qingyan casually took an account book and placed it in front of her. She casually looked at it, but her thoughts had already drifted far away. When Ma Yen arrived on time, Chu Qingyan started to ask questions again. Ma Yen was more cooperative than before. He answered all the questions and even added on his own. Chu Qingyan nodded in her heart. In that case, there are 4 sets of keys to the storehouse. 2 of them are with Jin Ling, and the other 2 are with Caretaker Shi and Caretaker Li? Chu Qingyan's fingers tapped on the table as she asked with rapt attention. That's right. There are 2 locks in the storehouse that were personally made by Lord Mu Ling. Other than those 2 keys, no one else can open it. There are 2 sets of keys. One set is with Jin Da, and the other set is with the 2 caretakers. Usually, when the storehouse is opened, both caretakers have to be present to open it, Ma Yen answered truthfully. You can personally evaluate these 2 caretakers. Chu Qingyan's tone was indifferent. Ma Yen glanced at her. These 2 people were Jin Da's right-hand men. He wondered if young Master Chu was suspecting them by asking this question. Jin Da was very protective of its own people. However, at this moment he couldn't think too much about it. After all, young Master Chu's actions were ruthless and efficient. It was enough to make him have a whole new level of respect for him. You can't judge a book by its cover. Caretaker Shi has been on duty for 8 years. Although he doesn't talk much and seems a little dull, he is reliable and rarely makes mistakes. Caretaker Li's personality is the opposite of Caretaker Shi's. He is more talkative, bold, meticulous, and amiable, Ma Yen said. Chu Qingyan nodded her head to express her understanding. However, she changed the topic and asked Ma Yen again. Including you, how many Xiao cavalry members are there in Su Clan Bank? Ma Yen didn't understand her jumping thoughts, but he subconsciously replied, 45 people. Good, very good. Chu Qingyan replied slowly. When Ma Yen saw the glint in her eyes, his heart thumped. He had a bad premonition. Chapter 623. The person in front of him said, good, twice, causing Ma Yen to panic. Ma Yen didn't dare to speak. He couldn't help but think back to yesterday when Lord Hualing came for a stroll. He had told them that this young Master Chu wasn't someone easy to fool, but they didn't put him in their eyes. But just now, she had defeated him in 2 or 3 moves, causing Ma Yen to raise his vigilance, not knowing what she was planning. When do you usually train? Chu Qingyan bent her index and middle finger, tapping the table lightly. This is not something that young Master Chu should be concerned about, right? Ma Yan's body instantly tensed up, his sharp gaze looking at the jade-faced youth in front of him. His reaction was within her expectations. She did not mind his unkind tone and smiled slightly. You don't have to be nervous. Actually, I am also a member of the Xiao cavalry, but I am curious about the training of the Xiao cavalry in Jiangnan, so I just asked casually. The other party's tone was gentle, and he even called himself a Xiao cavalry. Ma Yan hesitated for a moment before replying. Usually it is between 6 and 7 in the morning. May I ask which young Master Chu is a member of? I am the head cavalry. Chu Qingyan said indifferently. Head cavalry? What kind of name was this? He had been a member of the Xiao cavalry for so many years. How come he had never heard of it? Ma Yan fell into deep thought. If there is nothing else, you can leave first. Chu Qingyan waved her hand. Being waved away, Ma Yan felt a little uncomfortable in his heart, but he still nodded and turned to leave. Earlier on, she had learned from Turin that many of the Xiao cavalry held important positions in the bank, but Jin Ling was good at financial management, not good at managing people. Now that these Xiao cavalry were in Jiangnan, there was no one to discipline them. They were already like wild horses out of control. If she wanted to find out the mastermind behind the series of events, she needed the help of these people, otherwise it would be difficult to find the mastermind behind the scenes. Chu Qingyan quickly had a plan in her heart, but this plan, she needed the support of someone. After all, these people were all trained by her. Master, you were so domineering just now. You made that man lose his temper. Yang Xiaowan's eyes sparkled with admiration after the man left. You're not paying attention again. Where's the hard work you promised? Chu Qingyan raised her hand and tapped her forehead. She shook her head and laughed. Xiaohuan is very serious. She has already finished reading one book. Yang Xiaohuan waved the account book in her hand, rubbed her forehead, and stuck her tongue out. Oh, what did you find? Chu Qingyan didn't expect her to have any insights after reading the account book. She just mentioned it casually. In the end, she saw her touch her nose and said uncertainly, I think this way of keeping accounts is a bit complicated and not simple enough. Chu Qingyan was pleasantly surprised. Tell me about it. Hearing this, Yang Xiaohuan immediately shared her findings. Chu Qingyan leaned back in her chair and listened quietly. When she heard the last part, her face lit up with joy. Xiaohuan, look at a few more account books and summarize the problems. Who knows, there might be hope for you to become his disciple. Yang Xiaohuan hurriedly nodded and buried her head in the accounts again without delay. Chu Qingyan looked at her seriously pondering and felt an indescribable feeling in her heart. No one would have thought that she would really pick up a treasure when she picked it up at the beginning. She didn't idle and started to calculate. Compared to Yang Xiaowan's clattering on the abacus, she only needed a pen to calculate accurately. This came from the simplest addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division now, but it was very simple at this moment. One by one, the two of them went through the account books. When Jin Ling walked into the room to check on what the young princess consort was doing, she was surprised to see the two of them scribbling furiously. At this time, Chu Qingyan had also discovered Jin Ling's presence. She called him in front of her and then pointed at the account books on the table. There are discrepancies in the data. I have circled them. Have someone check them again. Jin Ling frowned. How could there be a problem with the accounts? But when he saw that the person in front of him had already flipped open the account pages and pointed at one or two places, Jin Ling was convinced. He felt uncomfortable inside. How did these people do things? Little Princess had seen through them at a glance. Had all these years of experience been fed to the dogs? Seeing that Jin Ling had agreed, Chu Qingyan pointed to the person beside her and said, Xiaohuan is quite knowledgeable about accounting. She has discovered some loopholes in your accounting methods. Now, the two of you should communicate and try to fix them. Finishing, Chu Qingyan stood and ignored Yang Xiaowan's pleading gaze. She smiled encouragingly at her and then left. If Xiaohuan was really going to be entrusted with an important task by her side, then bravely and calmly overcoming her timidity was the first hurdle she had to cross. If she couldn't give her a heavy blow, she would still cower in her turtle shell. Jin Ling was the person in charge of the Su family bank. How could this little girl in front of him have the qualifications to discuss this with him? Also, she was young. What could she know? Seeing her panicked and helpless expression, Jean Ling wanted to flick his sleeves and leave. But Little Princess's orders were there. He dared to disobey Little Princess, but he couldn't disobey the master behind Little Princess. Chapter 624. Chu Qingyan was very satisfied with this meal. Although the food was not to her liking, she was still in a good mood. After eating, Chu Qingyan looked up with a smile at Hua Ling on the side. When Hua Ling met her gaze, he suddenly shivered. Hua Ling, send out the order to gather at the training ground tomorrow. I want to see all of the fierce cavalry in Jiangnan. Chu Qingyan slowly said. Hua Ling immediately nodded, yes. When he walked out of the room, Hua Ling touched his forehead and found that he was covered in cold sweat. He looked at the sky and saw that it was bright and sunny, but he felt that for the fierce cavalry, it would be dark clouds. But this was also good. These people needed to be taught a lesson. Hua Ling had a sly smile on his face. Jean Ling, who was walking over, felt goosebumps appear on his body when he saw his expression. It's broad daylight. What are you smiling so eerily for? Jean Ling glared at him. Hua Ling also saw him and walked forward to pat his shoulder. His voice was filled with sympathy as he said, Jean Ling, you're done for. You've been targeted. What nonsense are you spouting this early in the morning? Jean Ling brushed off the hand on his shoulder in disgust. Hua Ling did not care as he revealed a gloating smile. Anyway, it's good that you don't disobey the little princess, otherwise you'll suffer. Hearing this, Jean Ling raised an eyebrow. Hua Ling, I haven't seen you in a few years and you've changed. When did you become so afraid of a woman? That's because you haven't fallen before. Don't look down on our little princess, otherwise. Hua Ling said this and mysteriously hid his words. He looked at him with sympathy again before turning to do proper business. Jean Ling did not want to care, but when he thought of how the little maid from the princess had checkmated him in the accounting room today, he felt an indescribable annoyance in his heart. Although that maid was right, this was a matter of face. Jean Ling's expression changed. He still had something to report to his master, so he walked directly to his master's yard. When he stepped into the room, Jean Ling immediately saw his master and the little Wang Fei who was grinding ink for his master at the table. He bowed slightly in greeting. What's the matter? Xiao Su looked at the ink in the inkstone and reminded the person beside him that it was time to add water. Jean Ling stepped forward and reported, Master, a new restaurant has opened in Jiangnan. The owner of the restaurant came to the bank this morning and wanted to borrow 100,000 taels. This is not a small sum, and this is the first time this subordinate has seen such a large loan in the bank. Since Master is here, this subordinate came to ask for your opinion. 100,000 is indeed not a small number. Have you checked his background? Xiao Su asked. I've checked. He has a clean background and has been doing business for generations. Basically, it's just a small business. The current head of the family moved to Jiangnan some time ago and then opened a restaurant. Jean Ling carefully recalled the investigation of the servant and then repeated it one by one. Your Highness, don't you think it's strange? Usually, a newly established restaurant would only need to spend a few hundred taels to support the rent and the artificial ingredients. Why does the owner want so much? Isn't he afraid that he will run away when the time comes? Chu Qingyan raised her doubts. The bank in ancient times was somewhat similar to the bank in modern times. The common people earned interest when they saved money, but they had to pay interest when they took out loans. The bank's profit came from the interest collected from the loans. Jean Ling calmly explained the other party's reason. The owner said that he wants to make high-end ingredients only for the upper class to eat. For example, there are fox, leopard, tiger, snake, abalone, shark's fin, sea cucumber, and other rare and exotic treasures that are rarely eaten in the market. Because the imported ingredients are more expensive, so he needs so much money. Chu Qingyan frowned. So he wanted to make such high-end food. If it was in modern times, most of the animals were rare in the country and would be caught and sent to jail. Although Jean Ling's words were reasonable, for some reason, Chu Qingyan still felt that something was wrong. Mistress, what do you think? Jean Ling continued. This subordinate thinks that this business can be done, but the amount is too large. If we want to do it, we need to transfer money from other places. We don't have much money left in our warehouse. Chu Qingyan looked at the person who was deep in thought, waiting for him to speak. Qingyan, tell me your opinion. Xiao Su looked at her again. Chu Qingyan, who was called out, faced Jean Ling's surprised gaze and said, I don't agree with taking this business. Our bank has just suffered a heavy blow and needs to recover first. It's better to do it steadily. If we take a risk, it will be best if we can make money. But if we lose money again, I'm afraid that we won't be able to continue. Jean Ling was unconcerned. Wang Fei, it's because our bank has suffered a heavy blow recently that we need this business to recover. That boss promised that if we can make a deal, he will pay 10,000 taels a month in interest and return the principal a year later. That is to say, after a year, we can make a total of 120,000 taels. This subordinate knows that you are worried that the other party is of unknown origin and cannot be trusted. But this subordinate has already investigated this family, so you don't have to worry too much. Jean Ling had already said so much. She was just a person who came here halfway and had nothing to say. So she didn't interrupt. At this moment, Jean Ling felt a heavy gaze on him. It was clearly the warm spring of April, but he felt an eerie cold wind brushing past his back. He couldn't help but muster up the courage to raise his head, only to see his master drinking tea attentively. He touched his forehead. Was it his imagination just now? This matter, Xiao Su put down the teacup and spoke slowly. He successfully attracted the two's attention. Don't make a decision so quickly. Qingyan, you take charge of this matter. Master, Wang Fei is not familiar with the transactions of the bank. Jean Ling couldn't help exclaiming. When Jean Ling finished speaking, Master's gaze landed again. As expected, it was the ice dregs from before. He immediately fell silent. It's because she is not familiar with it that she needs to be familiar with it from now on. Xiao Su looked away and said in a calm voice. Jean Ling reluctantly agreed. Go do what you need to do. This subordinate obeys. Jean Ling retreated. When Jean Ling left the room, Chu Qingyan turned to look in puzzlement at the person next to her. Why is this matter still being handed to me? She had already seen Jean Ling's repulsion towards her just now. He obviously didn't want her to interfere. I haven't been involved in business for many years. If I suddenly interfere, it will change their original business model. You are inexperienced and need to practice. This is an opportunity. If you can't clear the snow in front of your own door, how can you start your own business? Xiao Su looked at her with a serious expression. His tone was different from his usual indifference, and there was a rare seriousness in it. Chu Qingyan pondered over his words and suddenly smiled. Are you planning to let me practice? If Jean Ling knew that his master was only letting the little Wang Fei practice, he would probably bleed. Don't forget your identity. What identity? The mistress of the Su clan bank. That sounded good. Chapter 625. Chu Qingyan counted with her fingers. She had 3 things on hand right now. The theft of the bank, Jiangnan's Shaolai cavalry, and the restaurant owner's loan. These 3 things added together were enough to give her a headache. She had come to Jiangnan to develop her business. How did she become Big Ice Cube's subordinate? In just one day, she had recruited so many things. It was really enough. At this time, she was sitting in the hall, waiting for Jean Ling to send her some information. At this time, the person who stepped through the door was Turin. Chu Qingyan looked at the thing in his hand and couldn't help but tease. Sir Turin, when did you become a messenger? I just came over from Jean Ling's place. I heard that he sent someone to send you some information, so I brought it over. Turin put the thing in front of her and said with a smile. Sorry to trouble you. Chu Qingyan nodded and took out a piece of paper. She was about to start reading when she saw Turin standing in front of her. He seemed to have something to say. Is there anything else? Chu Qingyan put down the thing in her hand and asked calmly with her hands folded on her knees. Turin rarely took the initiative to talk to her. Now that he had come to deliver something and obviously had something to say, Chu Qingyan felt a little curious. Turan nodded and smiled. Little Gongzi, Jin Ling is the first of the 6 spirits to follow Master. He has a strong talent for numbers. After being trained by Xiao Lai cavalry, he was sent to Jiangnan by Master. He single-handedly established the Su family bank, including the shops, fields, and houses. He was only 13 years old at that time. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. To be able to establish the Su clan bank at the age of 13, one had to be extremely capable and courageous. Chu Qingyan now knew where Jiang Yi's arrogance came from. It was innate. However, Jin Ling is not an arrogant person. On the contrary, he keeps a low profile and does things steadily. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to manage the bank and the properties under his master's name so well, Turan continued. Yes, I can see that. Chu Qingyan agreed. Jiangnan's valiant cavalry. The first batch that followed Jin Ling has been called back by Master. The current batch was arranged to be the guards and managers of the bank after training. However, people will always slack off when they are comfortable. No matter how cruel the valiant cavalry's training was, each and every one of them stuck to their beliefs. In the end, they lost their minds in the happy environment. Turan's tone had a rare melancholy. Chu Qingyan felt that what he said was very reasonable, because after looking around the bank today, she faintly had this feeling. She just didn't expect to hear these words from Turan. Then why did you tell me so much today? She didn't quite understand. Towards Jin Ling and the Jiangnan's valiant cavalry, Turan suddenly had a wicked smile. Little Wang Fei, please don't show mercy. The situation had changed too quickly. She couldn't understand. After all, we risked our lives to eat and sleep in the open. They are living comfortably in Jiangnan. It's time to reminisce about their past lives. People cannot forget their roots. Turan smiled lightly. He seemed to be in a good mood. Chu Qingyan's lips jerked. She had originally thought that Turan had said so much to plead for mercy for Jin Ling. Who would have thought that the usually steady Turan would be like Hua Ling and add oil to the fire? He even dragged the Jiangnan's valiant cavalry into the water. He was so two-faced. After Turan left, Chu Qingyan held the letter in her hand. She couldn't help but laugh. She turned to ask the person next to her, Jin Xen, what do you think? Jin Xen had been standing at the side the entire time. Hearing his master's question, he thought for a moment before answering. This subordinate doesn't know if this subordinate is right. Turan Daren's message is that the Jiangnan's valiant cavalry is too weak. The valiant cavalry is a whole. If a weak spot is torn apart, then the teeth will be cold without the lips. So this subordinate wants you to take good care of these people and not become useless. Chu Qingyan nodded and looked with praise at Jin Xen. I find that you are becoming smarter. This subordinate has always been like this, Jin Xen said proudly. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. Was he insinuating that she couldn't see it? After sitting in the hall for a while, Chu Qingyan finished reading the information in her hands. The identity of the restaurant owner was so clean that no one could find any fault with it. But because of this, Chu Qingyan felt that something wasn't right. It seemed that she had to make a personal trip. Who is responsible for investigating the restaurant owner? Chu Qingyan went to the accounting room and asked Jin Ling, who was sitting behind the table, with a smile. Shi Qing and Li Buqing. She didn't understand why Master would give such an important task to Wang Fei. Wasn't it more reasonable to give it to someone more familiar with the transactions? But while she didn't understand, Jin Ling still reported the names of the two. Chu Qingyan thought about the two names and felt that they were somewhat familiar. Are these two the stewards who are in charge of keeping the silver key to the warehouse? Jin Ling didn't expect that she would know and nodded. That's right. The reason why they are in charge of keeping the key is because they are reliable and don't see eye to eye with each other. There won't be any collusion between them. Therefore, the investigation of the restaurant this time has been given to them. Jin Ling's explanation made Chu Qingyan nod slightly. Okay, I will make a trip to the restaurant this afternoon. I would like to invite the two stewards to come with me. Okay. Jin Ling agreed. Chu Qingyan said, Thank you. Little Gongzi, you don't have to be so polite. We are all working for Master. Jin Ling smiled. It's just that little Gongzi is inexperienced. If there is a need, you can ask the older stewards. Chu Qingyan felt that Jin Ling's words had a hidden meaning and curved her lips. Before she left, she didn't forget to say, "I hope you won't be late tomorrow morning." Jin Ling was choked by her words. His eyes were filled with annoyance as he gave a snort through gritted teeth. At this time, Hua Ling, who came to watch a good play, saw him wiping the tea stains on the table and looking a bit embarrassed. He couldn't help finding it funny as he sat down on the side. "You can't get anything good from the little princess consort again? What nonsense are you saying?" Jin Ling glared at him. "I have eyes to see," Hua Ling leisurely said. Jin Ling didn't want to pay attention to him, but he couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart. Master wasn't like this before, so why would he allow the little princess consort to do these things? If it isn't handled well, it will be a loss for the bank. Jin Ling didn't say it clearly, but Hua Ling knew that he was referring to the public provocation of the Jiangnan fierce cavalry, the investigation of the warehouse, and the loan from the restaurant. Hua Ling raised his brows and gave Jin Ling a teasing smile. "Could it be that you can't see that Master treats the little princess differently?" "It's because I can see it that I don't understand. Master isn't someone who can't distinguish right from wrong because of beauty." Jin Ling frowned. Hua Ling heard this and his face turned serious. "Jin Ling, if you think that the little princess consort only has beauty, then if you get messed with, I won't make a move to save you." "You?" Jin Ling was stunned. Actually, for Master, even if the Su family bank is destroyed in the little princess consort's hands, he won't feel any heartache. It's not that he is blinded by lust, but Hua Ling said this and paused. He looked up at Jin Ling and suddenly smiled. "Jin Ling, take care of yourself. Remember not to provoke the little princess consort. I won't help you collect your corpse." Chapter 626. Jin Ling was very efficient, and the two stewards appeared in front of her in a moment. "Please introduce yourselves first." Chu Qingyan leaned back in her chair and looked at the two stewards. As soon as she finished speaking, the tall and thin man on the left cupped his hands in greeting to Chu Qingyan. "This one is Shi Qing." Shi Qing introduced himself and then retreated. Chu Qingyan's eyes fell on him. He was tall and thin, and she didn't know if it was because he was malnourished, but his face was pale and his eyes were dull. Looking at his appearance, he really looked a little dull. After Shi Qing finished speaking, the other short and fat man also took a step forward. He was about 30 years old and had a smile on his face. "This one is Li Buqing, responsible for the daily accounts. If young Master Chu has anything you want to know, you can look for me at any time." Chu Qingyan nodded. She had heard about the characters of these two people from Ma Yan. Seeing them today, one was quiet and one was active. One was tall and one was short, one was fat and one was thin. It was very distinct. After Chu Qingyan looked at the two people, she withdrew her gaze. "My name is Chu Qingyan. I usually run errands by Master's side. Master originally wanted to personally go to the restaurant today. You also know that our bank has been involved in a lot of things recently. Master said that it was better to be cautious. But it just so happened that Master had an urgent matter to deal with, so he sent me to go. But I am not familiar with Jiangnan. You must have contacted the owner of the restaurant before coming, so I had to trouble Jin Ling University to specially invite the two of you to accompany me." Chu Qingyan's tone was a little frivolous and sloppy. Jin Xin, who was at the side, glanced over. His master was fooling people again. Thus, he lowered his head and turned a deaf ear. Shi Qing and Li Buqing seemed to be a little unhappy with Chu Qingyan's words and actions, but because of her identity, they couldn't show it. Their faces still maintained the same expression. "Young Master Chu, how can it be troublesome? This is my duty," Li Buqing said with a smile. Shi Qing nodded his head and agreed. Chu Qingyan stood up. She looked like an idiot if she didn't take advantage of the situation. Her tone was a little urgent as she said, "Since that's the case, let's go there now. Maybe we can get a free dinner later. It'll be a waste if we don't eat it. I heard that it's delicious." Generally speaking, it was normal to have a drinking party when discussing business. However, Chu Yen had brazenly said it out loud, which made people feel a little disdainful. Although the result would be the same, it was a little degrading to say it out loud. Shi Qing and Li Buqing didn't say anything, but their impression of Chu Qingyan was already very bad. However, being bad had its benefits. Chu Qingyan walked in front and curled her lips slightly. She was not going to play by the rules. She was going to see if the two of them would give themselves away. Although she had 8 to 9 suspects in the theft of the bank vault, she wanted to eliminate as many as she could. Now, she was going to start with these two. Linyue Restaurant. This name is not bad. Chu Qingyan looked at the signboard above her head and praised. I heard that the reason why it's called this is because this restaurant is near the river. When the moon rises, you can look into the distance by the window. Li Buqing explained with a smile. Chu Qingyan nodded. The scenery is not bad. Maybe we can look at the moon by the window tonight. When the group entered, the restaurant owner was already waiting at the counter. Welcome, I am Fang Xiang. The restaurant owner, Fang Xiang, greeted them warmly. The person in front of them had a general's belly. Because his cheeks were too fat, when he smiled, his eyes almost became a slit. However, it still couldn't hide the shrewdness in his eyes. You belong to this restaurant? Chu Qingyan pretended not to know him. Young Master Chu, your presence brings light to Linyue Restaurant. The owner of this restaurant is not talented, I am just a humble one. Then, Fang Xiang became even more enthusiastic. He bowed and raised his hand. This way, please. After learning that you are coming, I have already prepared some food and wine. Let's talk while we eat. Chu Qingyan lowered her eyes, a dim light flashing in them. She had decided to come to Linyue Restaurant on the spur of the moment, but the owners seemed to have known about it beforehand. Could it be that they had been targeted as soon as they stepped out? Okay, thank you, Mr. Fang. I just came to Jiangnan, and I've been drooling over the food here for a long time. Before my but even warmed up, I was assigned a task. Fortunately, it's a cushy job, or else I would have quit, Chu Qingyan said half-jokingly. Hearing this, Mr. Fang's eyes narrowed into a slit. I'm sure young Master Chu will want to come back for another meal. That's great, Chu Qingyan also said with a smile. They sat down in a private room. While waiting for their food, Chu Qingyan glanced around the room and asked curiously, there are zither and gyukins here, right? Mr. Fang stroked his beard and said with a smile, since our restaurant wants to do business with the upper class, we have to pretend to be cultured and elegant. Young Master Chu, you should know that it's not easy to do this business, and the cost is too high. However, the girls we invited are all top-notch in music and guqin. Why don't you come and listen to their songs for us and see how they are? See if they are pleasing to your eyes. Mr. Fang emphasized the last two words, and Chu Qingyan smiled knowingly. Hurry up and invite these girls over. I can't wait to see them. Shi Qing sat on the side, unmoving. Li Buqing stroked his beard and watched the conversation between Chu Qingyan and Mr. Fang without batting an eyelid. This group of people came to the restaurant in the name of business, but none of them mentioned it since they entered the restaurant. However, no one dared to expose them. Hearing this, Mr. Fang clapped his hands, and 3 girls' cheerful voices came from outside the door. Chu Qingyan pretended to be blinded by lust as she stared intently at the entrance. She watched as one person walked in, one after the other. The first person was dressed neatly and covered everything that needed to be covered. The second person was wearing a thin spring shirt, and the last person was wearing a tube top that exposed her navel. She wore a short skirt with a transparent white veil covering her skin, which was faintly discernible. Are they trying to seduce me? A mysterious light flashed in Chu Qingyan's eyes. She knew that the people around her were watching her closely, so she stared at the last girl who walked in with a lustful look and said, they say that Jiangnan is full of beauties, and it's true. Look at the water spirit, they must be talented. Young Master Chu, you flatter me. Come on, perform well and play a song for young Master Chu, Mr. Fang said to Chu Qingyan and then turned to the other girls. Yes, the girls replied in coquettish voices. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan felt like her entire body was going to melt. She rested her chin on her hand and looked intoxicated. When the rest saw Chu Qingyan's expression, they all had their own plans. Chapter 627. While Chu Qingyan listened to the music and looked at the beauties in a daze, the dishes were all served. Young Master Chu, come and try our dishes. Mr. Fong wanted to help her put the dishes into her bowl. Chu Qingyan declined immediately. Mr. Fong, you're too kind. I'll do it myself. Then she picked up her chopsticks and put some food into her mouth. It tasted okay, but it was still far from delicious. Not bad. Jiangnan's delicacies live up to their reputation. Chu Qingyan gave Mr. Fong a thumbs up and tried a few more dishes. Mr. Fong was elated. Young Master Chu, you're too kind. I'm telling you the truth. Chu Qingyan pretended to be polite. Come on. Let's drink to this rare opportunity. Mr. Fong wanted to pour wine for her. At this moment, Jin Exin, who had been invisible, suddenly raised his hand and stopped him. Our young master hasn't been feeling well recently and can't drink. Mr. Fong frowned and stopped what he was doing. He looked at Chu Qingyan and asked for her opinion. Chu Qingyan was also puzzled. When did she feel unwell? How come she didn't know about it? However, Jin Exin had always been a man of few words. Since he had spoken, she didn't want to touch the wine. You're right. I'm afraid that he drank some wine at Yihong brothel last time and caused that. We men all know about it, so there's no need to say it out loud. Chu Qingyan smiled meaningfully. Yihong brothel was obviously a brothel. Although Chu Qingyan had said it vaguely, the other three knew that it was just drinking with girls. It was normal for men to talk to each other. When Jin Exin returned to his seat, he almost limped. Their young master was still an unmarried girl, okay? How could they talk to each other like that? Jin Exin lowered his head silently. He didn't hear anything. He didn't hear anything at all. After Chu Qingyan said that, Mr. Fong didn't insist on toasting her. Instead, he changed the tea for her. Young Master Chu, is it hard in your line of work? Mr. Fong tried to find a topic to talk about. Chu Qingyan said with a bitter smile, yeah. We run around all day and can't even stop to rest. Whenever our young master has an idea, she orders you to do it. She doesn't consider whether it's late at night or early in the morning. Mr. Fong said with empathy, I thought that our line of work is hard enough. We have to wake up early and sleep late. Young Master Chu. Chu Qingyan sighed. It's not easy at all. Young Master Chu, Mr. Fong, said, who was dressed. After saying that, Mr. Fong called over the girl who was dressed the least. Peony, serve young Master Chu well. The lady called Peony acknowledged the order and sat down beside Chu Qingyan. She picked up a pair of chopsticks, picked up some food, and placed it in Chu Qingyan's mouth. Young Master Chu, come, let me serve you. Chu Qingyan opened her mouth and took the opportunity to touch the girl's hand. Peony chuckled and said, You're so annoying. While Chu Qingyan flirted with Peony, Mr. Fong, Shi Qing, and Li Buqing chatted from time to time. After a while, Mr. Fong saw that Chu Qingyan was enjoying herself, so he excused himself and said that he would leave for a while. Chu Qingyan waved her hand generously. Not long after, Shi Qing also stood up and said that he wanted to relieve himself. Chu Qingyan was so happy that she forgot about her duties, so she generously let him go. Now, only Chu Qingyan, Li Buqing, and a few other girls were left in the private room. Chu Qingyan sipped the tea that Peony was holding. Then, she turned to Li Buqing and smiled casually. Manager Li, I'm sorry. But this is how we do business at the table. I've always done it this way. Please don't be offended. Li Buqing replied with a smile, I won't. Young Master Chu, I admire your carefree attitude. Chu Qingyan thought to herself, it seems like he's also a smiling tiger. I wonder what he's thinking. Manager Li, I almost forgot about the important business. How was your conversation with Mr. Fong? Chu Qingyan leaned against Peony and asked casually. It was a big taboo to talk about important business in the other party's territory with his people around. However, Li Buqing saw that Chu Qingyan was completely captivated by the girl beside her and didn't have any scruples. Li Buqing's expression didn't change, and he still looked healthy. What Mr. Fong told us is true. What did you find out, young Master Chu? I think this Mr. Fong is quite smart and suitable for doing business. The location of the restaurant is good, and the dishes are delicious. He has a good business mind to invite girls to play zither and sing to relieve his boredom. Chu Qingyan seemed to be blinded by lust. She leaned close to Peony and sniffed here and there with an infatuated expression. Li Buqing nodded with a smile, looking very satisfied. Jin Xin, who was at the side, saw that his master was taking advantage of a woman. He couldn't bear to watch. If His Highness knew that his master was so skilled at doing this kind of thing, would he chop off his master's hands? Oh no, he would chop off Peony's hands. After a while, Mr. Fong returned to his room. By now, Chu Qingyan was cuddling with Peony. Li Buqing had drunk a lot of wine and was lying on the table dizzily. At this moment, Mr. Fong took out a box from his sleeve and handed it to Chu Qingyan with a flattering smile on his face. Young Master Chu, it's our first time meeting, but I feel like we're old friends. Therefore, I prepared a small gift for our first meeting. I hope young Master Chu doesn't mind. Chu Qingyan looked troubled. I don't think it's a good idea. If other people know about this, they will think that I took bribes. Besides, I can't accept a reward without doing anything. This is only between two friends, and no one will know about it. I need young Master Chu's help with something. Mr. Fong patted her shoulder and winked at her. The fox finally revealed its tail. Chu Qingyan opened the box and saw an emerald necklace inside. She immediately closed the box and put it into her sleeve impatiently. Then she nodded at Mr. Fong and said, "Then I'll take it." Young Master Chu, you're a straightforward person. What about the loan? Mr. Fong rubbed his fingers and chuckled. Chu Qingyan patted her chest. I'll put in a good word for you in front of my master. It's only 100,000 yuan. Don't worry. Mr. Fong smiled so widely that his eyes almost disappeared. Then, I'll thank you in advance, young Master Chu. You're welcome, Chu Qingyan said with a faint smile. At this moment, Shi Qing entered the room with an apologetic expression. Young Master Chu, I'm so sorry. My stomach is upset. It's okay. We're almost done talking. Wake up, Manager Li. We should go now. Chu Qingyan touched Peony's face and said goodbye to Mr. Fong. It's getting late and we have to go back. Thank you for your hospitality tonight, Mr. Fong. Mr. Fong walked them to the door with great hospitality. When they disappeared at the intersection, the flattering expression on his face disappeared and was replaced by a vicious expression. He said to the black-clothed man behind him, "Tell Master that things went well." Yes. Chapter 628. They reached a fork in the road. Chu Qingyan said to Shi Qing and Li Buqing, "It's still early, I'll take a stroll around. Both of you can go back first." Shi Qing and Li Buqing saw her anxious expression, and then looked at the brothel in front of them. They understood that she was going to indulge in wine and pleasure, so the two of them bowed and left first. Chu Qingyan watched as the two of them gradually disappeared into the distance. Then, she chose a direction and walked leisurely. Jean Xian, did you notice anything amiss at the banquet table? She threw the box in her sleeve to Jean Xian and walked leisurely with her hands behind her back. Upon hearing this, Jin Xin recalled the behavior of the few people at the banquet table. I felt that these few people seemed to be quite normal. There was no eye contact. Caretaker Shi and Caretaker Li seemed to be quite dissatisfied with your performance at the banquet table. They seem to be very displeased with you. Chu Qingyan's lips curved slightly. These three people are hiding their abilities. It's just that I'm not sure if they're friends or foes. Master should already have a plan in mind. Jean Xian felt that every time his master revealed such an expression, she should already have a card up her sleeve. However, she shook her head. It's hard to say. We should only know the answer tomorrow. Furthermore, I still have to investigate other suspects. Sigh, how did I become the life of a laborer? Heaven has taken pity on me. Jean Xian listened to her helpless complaints and couldn't help but laugh. Oh right, Jean Xian, just now you said that I'm not feeling well and can't drink. Which eye of yours saw that I'm not feeling well? Chu Qingyan thought of this and couldn't help but turn to him suspiciously. At this moment, Jean Xen couldn't laugh anymore. The last time when we were in Fu City, His Highness had already instructed us to take good care of you and not let you drink. He said that once you drink, you will go crazy. Hence, for your reputation, we must stop you from drinking. Chu Qingyan looked embarrassed. There's actually such a thing. Jean Xen added, today, when we left the bank, His Highness specially sent someone to give me instructions, so I can't disobey. Chu Qingyan glared at him. Who's your master? She only heard Jean Xen reply, you are this subordinate's master, but this subordinate is receiving His Highness' monthly allowance. Chu Qingyan choked. Jean Xen, when did you start being so sharp-tongued? Why didn't I know about it? Thank you, master, for your praise. I have always been like this. Jean Xen replied unhurriedly. Chu Qingyan snorted and continued to walk forward. When they arrived at a restaurant, Chu Qingyan turned around and walked in. Master, didn't you just eat? Jean Xen was puzzled. The food just now was too hard to swallow. Saying that it was delicious was just polite words. Besides, you haven't eaten yet, right? Let's go, I'll take you to eat authentic Jiangnan food. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but shake her head when she thought of the food she ate at Linyue restaurant. This restaurant's business was very good. When the two of them entered, there was only one table left. The waiter led the two of them over. Waiter brother, what signature dishes do you have here? Give me 5 or 6 dishes. Chu Qingyan didn't look at the menu and directly ordered. The waiter acknowledged and immediately left. Not long after, the waiter brought a pot of tea and filled their cups. Chu Qingyan casually asked, waiter brother, your restaurant's business is really good. I just came to Linyue restaurant and found that the business there was very quiet. It can't compare to yours. When the waiter heard this, he said with pride, that's because our chef is a famous Jiangnan chef. Linyue restaurant can't compare. Besides, I don't know what their boss is thinking, opening Linyue restaurant in that kind of place. It's not lively and the scenery is not charming. I heard that they want to make rare dishes, but without a good chef, no matter how good the ingredients are, it's useless. This has become a joke in our food industry. As soon as the waiter finished speaking, someone called for him and he immediately left. Jean Xen looked at his master who seemed to be deep in thought. He understood that his master was secretly investigating. At this moment in the lively hall, there were all kinds of discussions. You should know that the Hua family and the Chen family fought over business 2 days ago. I heard that the young master of the Hua family was beaten several times by the old master of the Hua family. He didn't go out these 2 days because of this. He can't get up from his bed. After the first customer finished speaking, everyone burst into laughter. I didn't see the young master of the Chen family these 2 days. I heard that he was punished to reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors. The second customer's tone carried a hint of schadenfreude. The Hua family and the Chen family are fighting for territory, customers, and talents. They have a deep grudge. It's not like you don't know. The third customer shook his head. Hearing the discussions around her, Chu Qingyan remembered that when she first arrived in Jiangnan, she saw the two groups of people fighting. Because of the delay in the bank, she didn't have time to investigate the Hua family and the Chen family. Everyone, what's the background of the Hua family and the Chen family? Why did I hear people talking about them along the way? Chu Qingyan asked with a face full of curiosity. Hearing this, the customers looked at Chu Qingyan. Seeing her outstanding appearance and sincere attitude, they didn't suspect her. The first customer stroked his beard and said, "Little brother, you shouldn't be a local. It's not surprising that you don't know." The Hua family and the Chen family are the two richest families in Jiangnan. The two families have always been fighting for the position of the #1 business in Jiangnan. Under their name, they are involved in rouge and face powder, silk and satin, pastries, wine shops, and so on. The Hua family is a true 3-generation rich family. The Chen family only started to rise in the past decade or so. I heard that the Chen family has connections in the palace. That's why they can rise so quickly. The second customer continued the first customer's words. The second customer smiled, It's all hearsay. We're not very clear about the real situation. We're just talking about it to satisfy our curiosity. Thank you for clearing my doubts. I just arrived in Jiangnan the day before yesterday and happened to see the Hua family and the Chen family having a conflict. That's why I'm curious. Do you know what kind of people the young master of the Hua family and the young master of the Chen family are? Chu Qingyan asked with a smile. The second young master of the Chen family, Chen Mingyi, is now 18 years old. He's more impulsive. However, his elder brother is a powerful character. His name is Qin Mingluan. He's only 20 years old. I heard that during the wine competition last year, he poached a wine master from the Hua family and defeated the Hua family. He became the shame of the Hua family for a time. As soon as he finished speaking, the second customer smiled and said, "That's true. The young master of the Hua family, Hua Xiuli, is not easy to bully. I heard that on that night, he beat up the traitorous wine master and even smashed a few barrels of the Qin family's aged wine." The old master of the Qin family lamented. Chu Qingyan felt that this young master of the Hua family was really quite interesting. But what's interesting is that the person in Hua Xiuli isn't a young man, but a lady. The first customer chuckled as he stroked his beard. Chu Qingyan was surprised. The person in Hua Xiuli was actually a lady? She thought of the purple-clothed youth who fought with Chen Mingyi. She didn't expect that he was actually a lady. Chapter 629. Chu Qingyan and Jean Exine stayed in the restaurant for more than 2 hours and heard a lot of news. Although it was still uncertain, Chu Qingyan had a general impression of Jiangnan. Because they still had to wake up early tomorrow, Chu Qingyan did not stay for long and brought Jean Exine back. When she returned to the courtyard, she saw Hua Ling waiting there. "Little Gongzi, master is waiting for you." I'll go over now." She did not have time to change her clothes as she walked over to Big Ice Cube's room. Once she entered, Chu Qingyan walked over to the table and poured herself a cup of water. She gulped it down and then asked the person sitting at the head seat, "Big Ice Cube, what are you looking for me for?" Seeing her drink 2 cups of water, Xiao Su raised his brows. "What did you eat tonight?" "I ate a lot, but there was a dish of shredded bamboo shoots with pepper. It was very spicy and it left a rich aftertaste." Chu Qingyan smacked her lips and then drank another cup of water. Xiao Su did not continue on this topic. "What are the results of today's investigation?" "There's already a preliminary result, but it can only be confirmed tomorrow. I can't tell you now. If it's not what I think, then it would be embarrassing." Chu Qingyan stuck her tongue out at him. Her plan was based on whether or not something would happen tomorrow. If it happened, then she could successfully eliminate 2 suspects. But if it didn't happen, hey, Xiao Su had always been accommodating to her little schemes. Xiao Su prepared to get up, but he smelled a faint fragrance in the air. He frowned and turned to walk towards Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan felt that it was about time. She should go back to wash up and sleep. Just as she was about to get up, a figure suddenly stood in front of her like a wall. Big Ice Cube, do you know that people can scare people to death?" Chu Qingyan took a step back. When she saw the person in front of her clearly, she patted her chest lightly and spoke with a hint of complaint in her voice. "What's that smell on you?" Xiao Su's tone was heavy, but she could not tell whether he was happy or angry. Chu Qingyan pulled up her clothes and sniffed here and there. She was confused. "There's no smell." Then she realized that Big Ice Cube did not smile. Chu Qingyan touched her head and then thought of something. She smiled slyly. "I know, it's that peony. Today, I went to Linyu restaurant. To confuse me, Mr. Fong asked a beautiful girl to accompany him. I probably got it at that time. It's a night, the smell should have faded. I didn't expect Big's nose. Big Ice's nose. I didn't expect Big's nose's nose. Xiao Su's face immediately darkened. Chu Qingyan raised her head after she finished speaking and saw a big black face looking right at her. She shuddered. Was the Big Ice Cube angry? Because she said he had a nose. She didn't call him a dog. Should she explain? Just as she was hesitating, a sentence came from above. "Go back and wash up." Change out of these clothes. Don't wear them. Right now. The cold words were like ice cubes smashing into her heart. Chu Qingyan was so scared that she immediately responded, "Yes, big boss." Then she disappeared like a whirlwind. Xiao Su looked at her fleeing figure and snorted. She was obviously a girl, but she always flirted with other girls. Yesterday, it was Yang Xiaohuan. Today, it was Peony. Xiao Su felt a headache coming on. As soon as Chu Qingyan entered the room, she collapsed on the bed. Yang Xiaohuan was already waiting in the room. When she saw that her master had returned, she went to greet her. "Master, do you want to eat supper first or take a bath first?" "I'm not hungry. Let's take a bath first." Chu Qingyan stretched, then cleaned herself up in the bathtub that Yang Xiaohuan had prepared. When Chu Qingyan was wringing her hair with a towel, she saw Yang Xiaohuan tidying up the clothes she wore today. Her hand paused. "Xiaohuan, don't wear that set of clothes. Throw it away." "But master, it's your first time wearing this set today." Yang Xiaohuan was puzzled. Chu Qingyan was also puzzled. "This is His Highness' intention." Yang Xiaohuan nodded. Since it was His Highness' intention, then His Highness had a reason. Unfortunately, they didn't know that this time, His Highness had no reason to follow. "I wasn't here in the afternoon. Did everything go well?" Chu Qingyan asked with a raised eyebrow while wringing her hair. Yang Xiaohuan replied, "Everything went well. Jinda also came over a few times. Although he doesn't like to smile, we discussed a lot of issues. Xiaohuan found that he's quite receptive to suggestions." "That's good. Xiaohuan, it's been hard on you. You have to look at the account books during the day and serve me at night. Bring Xining over in a few days. I miss her a little." Chu Qingyan let go of her hand and wrapped herself in the brocade quilt. Not only was she thinking about Xining, but she was also thinking about her parents. She wondered if they were doing well in Lianqing. "It's not hard on Xiaohuan. My life is very fulfilling now. If it weren't for Master, I'm afraid Xiaohuan wouldn't be able to do what she wants to do for the rest of her life." Yang Xiaohuan smiled at her gratefully, then walked out with her clothes. "Do what she wants to do." Chu Qingyan was a little emotional when she heard these words. The thing she wanted to do most in her life was to stay by Big Ice Cube's side for as long as she could. Although she was a little disappointing, this was really what she wanted to do the most. Starting a business and becoming stronger were just additional things. As she thought about it, she fell asleep. The next day, when dawn arrived, Chu Qingyan was already standing on the training ground waiting for everyone. She rubbed her eyes and yawned. She really had a hard life. From the moment she arrived in Jiangnan, she couldn't rest. But she raised her head and looked at the sparse Jiangnan fierce cavalry standing in front of her. She couldn't help but hold her cheeks. These people also couldn't let her rest. It seemed that she could only make them restless today. "Jean Exon, what time is it now?" Chu Qingyan asked faintly. "It's 3:15 in the morning." Jean Exon looked at the sky and replied, "How many people are here?" Chu Qingyan continued to ask. Although the number of people in front of them could be counted on one hand and could be seen at a glance, Jean Exon still answered dutifully, 8. His master was probably angry. As for the 8 people standing on the training ground, they were basically looking at the jade-faced scholar with hostility. Just this kind of person, what right did he have to order their fierce blade mounts? And to make them come to the training ground so early in the morning? This joke was too big. "Very good. How many people are here?" Chu Qingyan ignored the mockery on their faces and continued to ask. 45 people should be here. 5 stewards, 20 guards, and 20 guards." Jean Exon replied. Chu Qingyan smiled slightly. "No, it should be 46 people." Jean Exon frowned when he heard this. Then, as if he remembered something, he suddenly realized. "Yes, your subordinate calculated wrongly." Chu Qingyan leaned against the tree trunk, her posture relaxed. Her words were light and unimportant. "Then let's wait for the rest of the people. When they're here, we'll start." Then she stood to catch up on her sleep. Chapter 630. Chu Qingyan closed her eyes as the cool breeze blew across her cheeks. She was very comfortable. At this time, the people had arrived sparsely, accompanied by some noise. Some were discussing the wine from yesterday, some were discussing the newly opened casino, and some were discussing sex. Chu Qingyan's expression did not change, but she was muttering in her heart. She had never heard of these from the fierce cavalry. Although the fierce cavalry under Turan Hualing's command were sometimes very lascivious, they were very disciplined and gave people the feeling that they were iron-blooded men. Why were these people in front of her like ruffians? If she did not receive accurate information, she would have thought that these people had been replaced. Mistress, it is now Mausher, 40 people have arrived. Jean Xian's voice sounded in her ear at the right time. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she slowly opened her eyes. The people who had been fooling around at the side would occasionally pay attention to this young boy who had suddenly appeared. Although they did not know this person's background, they had heard that Mistress relied heavily on this person. However, people had a kind of bad habit. They always wanted to declare their sovereignty over people of unknown origins and did not want to be controlled. Chu Qingyan was somewhat glad that when she had arrived at the bank, she had worn a veil hat on her head. Therefore, even if she revealed her true appearance now, no one would be able to recognize her and it would be convenient for her to do things in the future. Who else is missing? Chu Qingyan did not pay attention to the noisy people in front of her and spoke in a calm voice. Su Qi, Su Jiao, Su 10, Su 13, Su 16, and Jean Xian pointed at the name list one by one. When he finished, Jean Ling's voice came from the door. No need to call, this subordinate is here. The confused and sleepy voice was Jean Ling. Chu Qingyan looked calmly at Jean Ling, who was walking slowly towards her. She smiled sincerely and said, Jean Ling University has been busy with business recently, and I'm too tired. I'm really sorry to have to call you here so early in the morning. Jean Ling was still a little sleepy, but when he heard the young Wang Fei's polite and guilty voice and respectfully called him Jinda, his sleepiness was scared out of his wits. Young Master Chu, what are you saying? Training and business should go hand in hand. Jean Ling smiled and stood to the side, not saying anything else. Chu Qingyan also smiled and no longer looked at him. She turned to Dashu behind her and said, I'll leave the rest to you. Jiangnan's Shaolai cavalry was puzzled. Who was young Master Chu talking to? As soon as he finished speaking, the people lying on the tree immediately stood up. It's just a small matter. Suddenly, he shot out of the courtyard like an arrow leaving the bow. Only then did the Jiangnan fierce cavalry realize that there were people on the tree, and there were no less than 5 of them. They all looked at each other. Should I say that your investigation is not good enough, or that their concealment technique is too good? Chu Qingyan glanced at everyone and asked in a doubtful tone. The Jiangnan fierce cavalry clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. No matter which one it was, they were not willing to choose. The first was a humiliation, and the second was even more humiliating. The fierce cavalry had always been proud of their investigation and concealment. Today, it was simply a slap in the face. Chu Qingyan looked at each of them with their heads slightly lowered, unwilling expressions. She thought that if they still felt unwilling, it meant that they could still be saved. The scene just now had successfully silenced the Jiangnan fierce cavalry. However, Chu Qingyan did not speak, and a silence spread in the courtyard. With no more noise around her, Chu Qingyan was happy to be free. Jean Ling originally thought that this was just a formality, but when he saw that the young princess did not make a move, nor did she make things difficult, and just stood there counting ants, for some reason, he had a bad feeling. Soon, Lu Guang and the others returned, each holding one person in their hands. They threw them in front of Chu Qingyan, and then stood behind Chu Qingyan. Some people would not be noticed when they blended into the crowd, but there were also some people who, no matter where they stood, would give people a feeling that they could not take their eyes off. Lu Guang and the others stood upright, and their expressions were solemn. With one look, one could tell that they were from the military. The people who were standing crookedly were affected and unconsciously puffed out their chests. Is everyone here? Chu Qingyan looked at everyone with a gentle gaze, and asked the people who arrived later, Did you sleep well? Being late, waiting for a long time, and being lazy did not anger the youth in front of them. Everyone was a little confused about the purpose of her summoning them to the training ground. The time that I set before was 3 in the morning. I should not be wrong, but everyone's sense of time is not very strong. Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin and said doubtfully. What was to come was coming. The Jiangnan fierce cavalry looked at Chu Qingyan with an unruly expression. Was she going to punish them? So many people were late, they would not be able to punish them. Wasn't she afraid that they would rebel? It's already like this on the first day. You can't expect me and everyone else to wait for you to wake up, put on your makeup, and walk slowly before starting, right? This is not good for everyone, and it will be a waste of meaningless time. Chu Qingyan said methodically. Young Master Chu, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't talk nonsense. One person shouted directly. Okay, long story short. A country has its laws and a family has its rules. Without rules, there can be no rules. Since you did not obey orders, you should be punished. Chu Qingyan glanced at everyone, and a light appeared in her eyes. What punishment? Young master, just say it. Another person said carelessly. Chu Qingyan took note of the few people who kept talking, frowned, and said slowly, Su Yi, Su San, Su Si, Su Wu, Su Lu, Su Ba, the 6 of you come out. Everyone frowned when they heard this, because the people who were called were the ones who arrived early. Why did young Master Chu call them? The 6 people didn't know why, but they came out. The 6 of you, each of you 700 push-ups. Start now. Chu Qingyan didn't have the leisure from before, and her face was full of seriousness. 700 push-ups? Was this a joke? When Chu Qingyan said this, not only Xiao Lai Chi from Jiangnan, but even Lu Guang and the others were surprised. However, she didn't seem to feel that it was inappropriate at all, and her eyes were fixed on the 6 people in front of her. But we're not late. One of the 6 people protested. What's your name? Chu Qingyan walked in front of him, raised her head and asked. Su Yi. As if touched by her cold eyes, Su Yi took a step back and finally gritted his teeth and resisted the other party's gaze. Very good, Su Yi, add 100 push-ups. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, her eyes fell on the people in the courtyard. The spring's eyes were warm, but the people felt that the cold winter hadn't left yet. Now my words are orders, and you can only obey orders. I will give you the answer you want later. Chapter 631. After Jin Ling recovered from his shock, a ball of fire came out of his chest. He wanted to go up and ask, but at this time, his calf was suddenly hit by something. He frowned and looked over. He saw Huo Ling on the wall. Seeing him look over, Huo Ling waved his hand at him, indicating that he should not interfere. Jin Ling was very unhappy in his heart. Touching his people in his territory was simply not putting him, Jin Ling, in his eyes. But Huo Ling's actions just now represented his master's intentions. No matter what, he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. Su Yi and the other 5 looked at Chu Qingyan and then looked at Jin Lingde, who was standing on the side. In the end, they could only resign themselves to their fate and do push-ups on the spot. Chu Qingyan walked to Su Yi and the other 5 and then pointed at 6 people. You guys come out and help them count. If you count wrong, do it again. The 6 people obeyed and stood beside Su Yi and the other 5 and began to count. 1, 2, 3. Originally, there was still some noise in the crowd, but when Su Yi and the other 5 counted to 300, the crowd's noise began to gradually decrease until it was completely silent. How many push-ups could a person do? No one knew. But very few people would suddenly do hundreds of push-ups. When the number reached 305, even the fierce cavalry's iron bones began to tremble at this moment. Large beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads. In the crowd, there were people who began to glare angrily at Chu Qingyan. They felt that her tough methods were simply unreasonable. Then there was a small voice. Chu Qingyan heard those words slandering her, but she did not take it to heart. Instead, she smiled and said casually, If I hear your voices again, Su Yi and the others will add more. When these words came out, it instantly returned to silence. 400, 401. The people counting could not bear to watch anymore. Their arms began to tremble as if they were about to fall. The more pain Su Yi and the others were in, the more angry everyone was at the initiator. Chu Qingyan felt that it was about time. She paced around Su Yi and the others with her hands behind her back and spoke slowly. I know that you are all angry. I don't punish people who are late, but I punish innocent people. As soon as her voice fell, the anger of the entire courtyard rose to a new height. Chu Qingyan did not care at all. She smiled. Maybe you are confused, but I have my reasons. Speaking up to this point, her brisk voice gradually deepened. The reason is actually very simple. You are a whole. When you go out to battle, you have never fought as individuals. You have always fought as a team. Let me ask you, when you are given orders, you do not unite as one. Instead, you drag everyone down. If you are not punctual, diligent, and do not do your best, then who are you dragging down in the end? No one had expected Chu Qingyan to say something like that. They were all stunned for a moment before their gazes slowly shifted to their friends who were still doing push-ups bitterly. Even Hua Ling, Lu Guang, and the others looked at the young princess in disbelief. When your teammates don't receive support or assistance, or wait for a lazy and not serious attitude, then in the end, not completing the mission is secondary. Whose life are you sacrificing? In the crowd, there were already people who quietly clenched their fists. That's right. The lives you are dragging down and sacrificing are the brothers in front of you who are gritting their teeth and persisting in doing push-ups. Because they are on time, they did not avoid their responsibilities. They arrived first and waited for you, but you did not come because of a moment of ease, or because you were lazy, or because you did not care. If this was a war, they would have been sacrificed. 495, 496, his fingertips turned white and sweat poured down like rain. The people counting could not bear to watch anymore. Chu Qingyan took a deep breath and then looked at the people present emotionally. Take a good look at these brothers who are being punished because of your negligence, your indifference, and your laziness. Can't these things be avoided? Because of Chu Qingyan's words, the crowd slowly began to blame themselves. Do you know why there are 8 people but I punished 6? Chu Qingyan turned around and looked at the crowd. The Jiangnan fierce cavalry looked at each other with confusion in their eyes. Because the other 2 people arrived at the same time. In my eyes, being on time is the same as being late. So these 2 people can only stand and watch their companions being punished. The crowd suddenly understood, but they also felt that Chu Qingyan was too harsh. Maybe you will think that I am making a mountain out of a molehill, but the small is enough to see the big picture. If you can't even be punctual, how can you talk about the big picture? If you don't sweep the house, how can you sweep the world? No, telling you all this now, it seems that I am overestimating you all. Chu Qingyan chuckled, and when she said that, many people immediately looked at her with red eyes. She shrugged her shoulders and said nonchalantly, even if you all want to tear me apart, I will still say that, because that is the truth. At this point, Chu Qingyan did not give them a chance to speak. The smile on her face disappeared, and she looked at the people in the courtyard with a serious expression. The fierce, valiant cavalry used to be an unsurpassable existence in the eyes of many. All this while, they had high standards, and high standards to flaunt themselves. However, what do I see in you? Lazy, thinking too highly of yourselves, your martial arts regressing, impatient and impetuous. Take a good look at yourselves. What have you all become? Who dares to pat their chest and say that they are part of the fierce cavalry? Chu Qingyan asked coldly. Every time Chu Qingyan said something, the people in front of her would lower their heads. It was not because they were right, but because they were lacking in confidence. The 3 words fierce cavalry suddenly became heavy. 500, 501, woo, there were already people who could not hold on and fell down, and the people at the side prepared to support them. You are not allowed to touch them. Continue. When Chu Qingyan said that, the people who wanted to extend their hands could only retract their hands. At this time, a few of the fierce cavalry could not stand anymore, and also bent down to do it. Emotions were contagious. Very quickly, the entire courtyard was filled with people bending down to do push-ups. Chu Qingyan looked around the courtyard and curled her lips. Substitutes are not counted. Although they said it, but they still insisted on doing it. I believe that as a member of the fierce cavalry, you will not give up so easily, even if it is an impossible task. Chu Qingyan looked at the people who were already lying on the ground and said indifferently. When the sun rose from the horizon bit by bit, it lit up the entire place. Chu Qingyan stood in front of everyone with her hands behind her back. Looking at the people who were either exhausted or unwilling to submit, she smiled. Hello, I am Chu Qingyan. From today onwards, I will be the coach in charge of your training. Please take care of me. Chapter 632. Chu Qingyan's words were filled with joy, but no one laughed. Now, let the training begin. As soon as she finished speaking, Su 11 stood up. Young Master Chu, although what you said just now makes sense, there's one thing I don't understand. Very well, I like students who ask questions. It's better than you keeping it to yourself. Speak. Chu Qingyan unceremoniously referred to the people in front of her as students, even though they all looked a few years older than her. Su 11's mouth twitched at the word, students. Young Master Chu, even if our fierce cavalry is much more lax than before, we still have the strength and strength. You came out of nowhere. What right do you have to be our coach? To put it bluntly, he was questioning her ability. As soon as Su 11 finished speaking, the people behind him echoed with dissatisfaction. Chu Qingyan smiled. She had already guessed this would happen. Then what do you want? Chu Qingyan asked calmly. Su 11 pursed his lips and said with a fake smile, unless you can convince our brothers. So you're asking me to fight with you? See whose fist is stronger? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd began to jeer again. Su 11 raised his chin. Why not? Chu Qingyan seemed to have heard something funny and was overjoyed. She looked at the people in front of her with a smile. Wouldn't it be too embarrassing for me to fight with you just because you say so? This sentence was a bit capricious, but also domineering. Why should they do whatever they want? Did Chu Qingyan look like someone who could be bullied so easily? What do you think, young Master Chu? Su 11 was annoyed by this person who did not play by the rules. How about this? You can choose any of the people behind me. As long as you can beat one of them, I will allow that person to not participate in the training. Chu Qingyan finished speaking and stepped aside. Lu Guang and the others behind her lined up in front of the crowd. At this time, Su Shiba said angrily, how dare you challenge us with some random people? Child Chu, don't you think you're looking down on our Jiangnan's fierce cavalry? Chu Qingyan smiled and turned to Lu Guang and the others. Some people don't know you. Introduce yourselves. Shadow Cavalry, Flowing Light. Shadow Cavalry, Green Melon. Guard Knight, 7 stars. Guard Cavalry, Cicada. Guard Mount, Sweet Potato. Lu Guang and the rest said. Actually, after seeing the actions of the Jiangnan Fierce Cavalry, they were already unwilling to deal with these people. They were simply a disgrace to the Fierce Cavalry. But the young princess consort was here, so they had to give her face. Are the Shadow Cavalry and Escort Cavalry qualified to be your opponents? Chu Qingyan calmly glanced at Jiangnan's Xiao cavalry, who had a look of disbelief on their faces when they announced their names. When Jin Ling heard Su Shiba's words, he knew that they would be at a disadvantage. Sure enough, the people the young princess consort found were all the fierce cavalry. Whether it was martial arts, riding, archery, or other aspects, they were all outstanding. Their Jiangnan fierce cavalry would definitely not be able to win. Hua Ling was watching the show from the top of the wall. It turned out that when the young princess consort asked him and Turin to borrow people, she had already guessed the current situation. He had to admit that the young princess consort's psychological tactics were very clever. First, she used Flowing Light and the others to make the Jiangnan fierce cavalry doubt themselves. Then she used the tear-inducing push-ups to break down the line of defense in their hearts. Finally, she used a duel to make them completely ashamed. Hua Ling touched his neck. The young princess consort was getting more cunning as she grew up. The Jiangnan Fierce Cavalry didn't expect that the person in front of them would invite Hua Ling's Escort Cavalry and Turin's Shadow Cavalry. Su Shiba didn't know how to answer, but Su Shiba was the first to react. Young Master Chu, did you make a mistake? We were just discussing whether you are qualified to be our coach. Even if you invited the Escort Cavalry and Shadow Cavalry, it won't solve this problem. Chu Qingyan nodded. Su Shiba's mind is very clear. You didn't get fooled by me. I'll give you a thumbs up. Since you are so serious, I'll arrange another person, Jean Xen. Jean Xen, who was called out, stood up. Young Master's escort, Jean Xen. Jean Xen is my personal guard. He represents me. You can choose 3 people. As long as one of you can defeat him, the training can be cancelled. What I said just now also counts. As long as any one of you can defeat one of the 5 people, you are allowed to not participate in the training. What do you think? Isn't this bet very tempting? Then let's go all out. Don't overdo it. The rule is to not kill anyone. Chu Qingyan's tone was very leisurely. It was as if they were not talking about a competition, but a bargain. Young Master Chu, do you mean what you say? Su Shiba glanced at Jean Xen and gloated. A gentleman's word is as good as a whip. Anyway, you have to be convinced. I'll leave it here. I promise on my character that I will respect the result of the competition. Hey, no more nonsense. Let's start. Chu Qingyan waved her hand impatiently. Then she directly pushed away from the center of the field and gave the territory to them. Jiangnan's fierce cavalry had already seen Jean Xion's existence. He was only 15 or 16 years old. To them, he was still too young. How much could such a person beat them? At this time, Chu Yan actually pushed him out to be their opponent. They did not know whether he was too arrogant or looked down on them too much. However, this was also good. They could make Chu Yan suffer. Otherwise, he would think that the Jiangnan's fierce cavalry was easy to bully. Although that was what they thought, the 3 people they had chosen were the best in terms of martial arts and internal energy. Because Lu Guang and the others were quite famous in the fierce cavalry, no one dared to directly challenge them. Instead, they first focused on the battle between them and Jean Xian. If they defeated Jean Xian, not only could they slap Chu Yan's face, but they could also cancel the training. This was better than not participating in the training alone. Lu Guang and the others were also happy to watch the show. Although they were of the same origin, they did not want to admit that the Jiangnan's fierce cavalry was one of them. Now, they could see how Jean Xian would teach them a lesson. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already walked to Jean Ling's side. Who do you think will win? Gongzi, your guard's martial arts might not be bad, but Su Yi and the others are not useless. Jean Ling suppressed his anger. Today, he was ruthlessly slapped in his own territory. Although he was convinced by the little princess methods, he still felt uncomfortable in his heart. Okay, then let's make a bet. What bet? If your people win, I will no longer interfere with the matters of the bank. And if not, you take Xiao Huan as your student and teach her everything. Chapter 633. Little Gongzi really cares about that servant girl. Jean Ling's tone was unclear, but there was a hint of ridicule in it. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. She knew that Jean Ling despised Xiao Huan's lowly status. Do you think that someone who has read books such as The Bead Algorithm, The Classic of Tea, and The Essential Techniques of the People would be a simple girl? Jean Ling frowned. Chu Qingyan continued, there is a lot of gold in this world, but I like to see a grain of sand slowly being ground into a pearl. Maybe you think that Xiao Huan is very ordinary, but I believe that you will have a whole new level of respect for her in the future. Jean Ling was a little surprised to receive such a positive evaluation from the little princess, but when he recalled the suggestions that the little girl had given him in the past 2 days, he couldn't help but take back his previous thoughts. Jean Ling thought for a moment, then nodded. This subordinate accepts this bet. Chu Qingyan curled her lips. Then I will thank your teacher on behalf of Xiao Huan. As soon as her voice fell, Jean Ling choked. Little Gongzi, the competition hasn't started yet. Isn't it too rash to make such a conclusion so early? Chu Qingyan laughed mischievously. Then let's wait and see. With that, she turned her gaze to the center of the field. Jin Ling looked deeply at the quiet person beside him. This little Gongzi was even more unfathomable than what Huo Ling and the others had said. When he was in Jiangnan, when he heard these internal rumors, he didn't believe it at first. What could a 10-year-old child do at that time? It was just a rumor that had been packaged and over-exaggerated. Even if the little Gongzi was now 15, she was still a girl. What could she do to help master? If there was any merit, it could only be said that she had a sharp tongue. But now, after a short confrontation, he overturned his previous thoughts. Some people, you had to get along with them before you could give a reasonable evaluation. But even so, he didn't believe that the fierce cavalry that he had trained would lose to her people. The competition was about to start. Chu Qingyan leaned against the tree trunk and looked at the field with a leisurely expression, as if she wasn't worried at all. Su Shi took the lead and asked Jin Xian, "What weapon do you want to use?" After saying that, Jin Xian unsheathed the sword at his waist. "Judging from your young age, you must have just started practicing martial arts. How about this? I'll let you have 3 moves first." Su 11 felt that he shouldn't bully a kid, so he made a bold offer. Jin Xian frowned. "You're so long-winded. I'll give you 10 moves." His words caused an uproar among the crowd. "Looks like you're still a greenhorn, so you're not afraid of tigers." Su Shi was furious. This was the first time he had seen such a blatant provocation. "Let's begin." Jin Xian didn't like to waste time, so he drew his sword and pointed it at the person in front of him. Su 11 did not hold back either. Since he said he would let him have 10 moves, then he would let him lose miserably within 10 moves. Let's see if he still dares to boast like this. With a thought, Su 11 unsheathed his sword and charged towards Jin Xian. Chu Qingyan looked up at the morning sun that had already risen over the mountains. She couldn't help but squint her eyes. The spring river was warm, the sun was warm, and the misty rain was blue. This season was very suitable for going out to play. Unfortunately, at this time, she could only waste time with this group of people. "Why aren't you watching, young Master Chu? Can't bear to see your people lose?" Su Shi saw that Chu Qingyan didn't pay attention to the competition at all, so he couldn't help but mock her. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and her eyes fell on the person in front of her. Is it necessary to watch a competition where the result is already known? Young Master Chu, you're so arrogant. Su Shi smiled, but the smile in his eyes didn't reach his eyes. Chu Qingyan shrugged. If you could put more effort into training, then I'm afraid I wouldn't be so arrogant. Young Master Chu, don't act like you know us very well. Su Shi snorted. Shi, let me ask you, when is the training time of the fierce cavalry? And when do you usually train? What are the 8 military disciplines of the fierce cavalry? Do you still remember? Chu Qingyan changed her usual attitude and asked in a very serious tone. Su Shi was speechless. They all knew these questions, but in the face of her interrogation, they couldn't answer. Training at 5 o'clock is the most basic requirement, but I'm afraid you don't even have the usual training. Chu Qingyan recalled that when Ma Yan said this, there was a moment of hesitation. At that time, she knew that the fierce cavalry of Jiangnan had probably lost themselves in this comfortable and extravagant environment. Just as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, there was a muffled groan in the middle of the field, and the sound of something heavy falling to the ground. Chu Qingyan didn't look at Su Shi's pale face, but turned her eyes to the source of the sound, only to see that Su Shi had been heavily thrown to the ground. She just chatted for a short while, and the first round was over. Su Shi's hands were on the ground, and he couldn't believe that he lost to this kid. In the 10 moves just now, he didn't even touch his clothes. When the 11th move began, he was sent flying by his palm. He was not a bystander, and he could feel the strong internal force of the opponent's palm. It was unstoppable. When Su Shi fell to the ground, the crowd was speechless. It was an instant kill, and it was from a 15 or 16-year-old boy in front of them. It was difficult to describe their feelings at this time. Jin Ling stood at the side, his eyes filled with disbelief. He subconsciously looked at Chu Qingyan, who was not far away, and saw that she had expected this. He couldn't help but clench his fists. Was he going to lose? It didn't matter if he lost the bet, because there were winners and losers in life, but it was different if he lost face. He didn't expect that his subordinates would be so weak in front of her. This could be said to be a great shame. Jean Xian didn't look at Su Shi, but looked at the other two. Let's go together. Although Su Shi lost, Jean Xian's words undoubtedly provoked the anger of Jiangnan's fierce cavalry. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but want to applaud Jean Xian. His way of saying things was really good. It seemed that she had chosen the right person. Jean Xian's temperament was like this. He was concise and didn't like to drag his feet. In fact, it was not that he looked down on Jiangnan's fierce cavalry, but he felt that one-on-one was too troublesome, so it was better to fight two. Of course, he was still quite confident in his skills. This time, it was Ma Yan and Ma Lu. Jean Xian didn't talk nonsense and directly pointed his sword at them. Ma Yan and Ma Lu looked at each other and took the initiative to attack Jean Xian. It didn't matter if the two of them were bullying one person or if they didn't give way, they just wanted to win now. Only then could they win a round. However, the result was beyond Jean Ling's and the others' expectations. Chu Qingyan walked to Jean Ling's side, raised her hand, and patted him on the shoulder. She sighed and said, "If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat." Chapter 634. Jean Ling hung her head unwillingly but couldn't resist. They had lost. They had suffered a crushing defeat. Ma Yan and Ma Lu couldn't even last 20 moves in Jean Xian's hands. Jean Xian kept his sword and walked past the two people on the ground without looking sideways. Then he returned to his master's side. His presence suddenly disappeared. Not arrogant, not rash, low-key, and not flamboyant, this was the impression that Jean Xian gave people. Well done. Chu Qingyan gave Jean Xian a thumbs up. Jean Xian looked back at his master with a calm expression. Needless to say, wasn't everything within her expectations? Chu Qingyan choked. Humph, Jean Xian seemed to have become more arrogant recently. He actually dared to talk back to her. Be careful, she will transfer Xining over in 2 days. See if you still dare to be so arrogant. Jean Xian didn't know that he had been marked by his master and stood silently at the side, acting as an invisible person. How is it? Do you still want to continue the challenge? Chu Qingyan stood up and looked at the people who lowered their heads because of her voice. No one made a sound. Even Lu Guang and the others who were eager to teach these people a lesson didn't get any response. Young Master Chu, we will listen to your training. Jean Ling spoke up at this time. Since they had already lost, then they should lose with grace. Chu Qingyan nodded. Very good, then let's start the training now. The first lesson, horse stance. Horse stance, isn't it a beginner's lesson? Someone raised an objection. But do you think that you don't need to start from scratch now? Since you haven't trained for so long, isn't it good to review the previous training? Reviewing the old to learn the new. Chu Qingyan looked innocent. Don't talk nonsense, let's start. Jean Ling raised her hand and said to everyone. Since Jean Do had already spoken, they had no reason to resist. Thus, everyone lined up neatly and began to do the horse stance. Chu Qingyan smiled with satisfaction, then turned to Lu Guang and the others who were still unsatisfied that they didn't have a big fight. I'll give you a task, help me supervise them. You can punish them however you want. Hearing this, Lu Guang and the others immediately put on a cheerful face. This was exactly what they wanted. Soon, there were many strange things in their hands, such as feather dusters, sticks, whips. When the Jiangnan's Xiao saw the things in their hands, their faces suddenly turned pale. Flowing Light and the others were patrolling the field. Once they saw anyone who was not moving properly, they would give them a whip, a stick, or a feather duster. Chu Qingyan watched from the side with great interest. She even discussed with Jean Xian how to hit him more, and Jean Xian ended the conversation by saying that his flesh was the most painful. However, no matter what it was, as long as a little bit of inner force was added to it, it would be strange if it didn't hurt. hating iron for not becoming steel. Because Hualing's Xiao cavalry would temporarily take over the responsibility of protecting the Jiangnan's Xiao cavalry, Chu Qingyan was free to discipline these people. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and someone brought over a table, chairs, fruits, and snacks. She sat on the side, eating pastries and tasting fruit tea. A servant held an umbrella to shade her from the sun, and another servant fanned her. She was very carefree. Su Yi and the others were exposed to the sun. They were already proud and arrogant, and they didn't want to accept such a simple training method. Now that they smelled the fragrance of the fruits, they became even more restless. Time slowly passed, and 2 hours had already passed. Some people couldn't stand anymore. The frequency of Lu Guang and the others' whipping became higher and higher. Just when everyone's emotions were about to reach the peak, Chu Qingyan, who was resting with her eyes closed, slowly opened her eyes. "Are you guys not convinced?" No one uttered a word, but the expression on their faces showed that they weren't convinced. Chu Qingyan tossed a peanut into her mouth, and then said slowly, "Do you still remember the 2 silver loans from Xianyang and Xiangyang a few days ago?" Without waiting for them to answer, Chu Qingyan answered her own question, "I think you guys should have forgotten. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so indifferent." Lu Guang, Green Gourd, and the others heard this and looked at the young princess who was leisurely leaning against the back of the chair. Was she finally going to start a punitive expedition? It had to be said that the timing was too good. Su Shi and the others were first stunned. They knew that they were in the wrong about the silver being stolen from Xiangyang, so they all lowered their heads. "If it weren't for the fact that you were all from the Xiao cavalry, I would suspect that there was a mole among you." Chu Qingyan's fingers tapped the table as she said calmly. The Xiao cavalry was single-handedly trained by Xiao Su. Among the 8 major military disciplines, the first one was loyalty, so there was no doubt about the loyalty of the Xiao cavalry. "Even if we are not capable, young Master Chu can't insult us." One of them shouted in dissatisfaction. "Not capable? Ha," Chu Qingyan chuckled. "I think you guys used to be proud of being part of the Xiao cavalry. Think about it, were the people who came to rob the silver really better than you?" Thinking back to the masked people, although they were good at martial arts, they were no match for them. Everyone was silent. Chu Qingyan shook her head. "No, it should be said that they were not as good as you were in the past. But now you guys are undisciplined, have low vigilance, and have lost your conscience. You can't be called a qualified Xiao cavalry. If you had half of your ability in the past, would you still be robbed of such important silver? Would you feel ashamed to be outdone by bandits? Jiangnan is indeed peaceful and beautiful, but this cannot be the reason for you guys to fall. Is there no one who taught you to be vigilant in times of peace?" With that, the peanut in Chu Qingyan's hand flew out and hit one of the people's calves. "You guys can't even do such a simple horse stance, and you guys still dare to pat your chest and call yourselves Xiao cavalry?" A light breeze blew through the treetops, bringing a leaf down. The entire courtyard was dead silent. "From today onwards, I will officially be your coach. I will help you guys regain the image of a Xiao cavalry. If you feel that I am not qualified, you can say it, and you can leave at any time. I, Chu Qingyan, will not force people. But as long as you guys stay, you have to listen to my orders unconditionally. My words are the rules. Do you understand?" Chu Qingyan suddenly said sternly. "Understood. So soft, did you not eat breakfast?" "Understood." Chu Qingyan nodded with satisfaction. "Good, do the horse stance for 2 hours." In a flash, everyone seemed to sway their bodies. Hualing, who was nestled on the wall, straightened his back and looked deeply at the person who was leisurely leaning on the chair. The little princess seemed to understand the art of controlling people more and more. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.